The boy stood by a large magic circle. He sighed, saying that 3 months had passed, ever since he saved that world, and today he would finally return. He stood in the magic circle and said goodbye to Japan. He shouted joyfully for the fantasy world to welcome him. The boy stood in the middle of a large field, arms outstretched. He thought about what he could do. He clenched his fist, because he was here again. When he opened his hand, flames appeared on it. 4 years ago, they summoned him to Andalusia with the sole purpose of killing the Demon King. But after he did so, he was forcibly returned to Earth. However, 3 months later, he came back. And, with the power he had gained as a hero, he raised his hands, creating a path of Earth. He thought about what he wanted to do. At that time, some people were running away from there, when suddenly something grabbed their legs. They were surprised. The guy wanted to be surrounded by beautiful girls. Andalusia is a typical fantasy with everything on offer. There are gnomes, demonesses, beast girls, elves, and other beautiful ladies. A harem that can only be assembled here and with the power of a hero. For 3 whole years, he fought just for this. It was also the only reason the boy came back to this place. He came to this beautiful world of sword and magic only for his hero dream. An old man shouted at the guy that he really was incredibly strong because he had defeated so many mercenaries when he was already completely desperate. The guy scratched his head awkwardly and said that everything was fine because he just happened to be there at the right moment. The man said that a year ago he did not drive on this road because of robbers. And in reality, everything turned out to be much more dangerous than he had previously thought, so the guy really saved him from this difficult situation. The boy smiled and agreed with the man's words. After that, he decided to ask if he would go further along the road and whether he would be able to get to Andalusia. Hearing this question, the man was a little surprised and looked at the guy, who was smiling a little awkwardly. The guy himself was a little awkward. The man said that this road only leads to the City of Towers. The boy sat quietly and smiled, thinking that it felt like asking in Japan where Tokyo was. He was very embarrassed that he could ask such a stupid question. After that, he rode in the carriage quite quietly, thinking that the kingdom of Milis, like, in fact, the City of Towers, was an unknown place to him, which he heard about for the first time. Later, they came to the City of Towers. The boy was summoned in a capital, after which he was immediately sent to the continent of demons, from where he could not get out. The royal family first used him and then returned to this land. He supposed that it was even good that he was away from them. The man then exclaimed loudly, addressing his savior Amajai. He explained that the place they had come to was the Adventurers' Guild. He bowed deeply and left, thanking the boy again for saving him so kindly. Amajai, on the other hand, waved the man off with a smile, bidding him farewell. Afterwards, the boy entered the guild, where he was met at the reception desk by a nice girl. She put some papers on the table and told Amagai that they should register him now. She smiled and politely asked him to let her, Etna Murfin, take care of it. The boy started flirting. He smiled and told the girl that he could call her Haruto, calling him by his first name. Etna was taken aback and took a small step back, repeating his name. She smiled awkwardly and agreed to his proposal, after which she said that they should start registering the boy in the guild anyway. The guy was already enjoying the idea of himself lying on this cute girl's lap. She would sigh, saying that he was already finished, and so now they could do something interesting. Haruto thought that it would be very nice. He blushed while Etna asked him to fill in his details on the form. The girl asked if he could read and write. Haruto hesitated, saying that his skills were a bit poor. Etna took the pen and said that she understood and it was no problem, so she could do it for him. Afterwards, she asked him with interest if he really wanted to become an adventurer. Haruto immediately agreed to it. The girl wrote something down on a piece of paper and said that she thought he definitely needed to learn to read and write. Then she asked him where he was born. He smiled, thinking that it would be impossible for him anyway. Haruto said that he was born in Mild Village. Hearing this, she came to the final part, asking about what kind of requests he had. The boy thought about it, and Etna said that there were different types and she needed to know which ones he preferred. Haruto thought deeply because this needed to be thought through calmly. He didn't know whether he should try to study or find someone who could read and write. The guy quickly said that his preferred job would be one that involved hunting demons and also protecting various merchants. Hearing this, Etna smiled sweetly and said that, indeed, in this matter, the guy had already managed to demonstrate his capabilities simply superbly. Haruto melted, thinking how cute it was. Afterwards, the girl told him that he finally had to leave his fingerprint on the documents she had managed to write. The guy looked at the papers in silence, feeling a little nervous. He couldn't even figure out whether he should sign next to his own name, and Etna seemed to have pretty bad handwriting. After he left his imprint, the girl smiled and said that the registration was over, and Haruto's guild card would be prepared now, so he should wait a minute. The boy looked out the window and noticed that the sun would soon set, and he should have already left to look for a place to stay for the night, but Etna had a request for him. He suddenly blushed deeply, thinking that while he was listening to the details of the request to find a roof over his head, he had not even noticed how there was no time left at all. He imagined Etna in a rather indecent state and wondered if she would feel guilty and would allow him to spend the night at her place as an apology. Suddenly, Haruto had to come back to reality. He smiled and thought that it wouldn't come true anyway. He scratched his head awkwardly and asked what kind of question it was. Etna said that the hero would soon arrive here from the capital, so they needed to get rid of the demons at the southern gate. Hearing this, Haruto froze. The guy didn't understand at all how this could be, and whether the hero was really hero. At the same time, Etna said with a smile that it was written on the paper that goblins had bred there. The guy stopped Etna's speech with a loud shout and asked about the hero and whether he really existed. With a smile on her face, the girl asked if he really didn't know about it. She said that someone who could use the holy sword had recently been found, and shortly after that, its existence was publicly announced. Hearing this, Haruto turned noticeably pale. He didn't understand at all what kind of owner of the holy sword was, because in his case, everything was completely different. He was sweating from nerves. His hands trembled, and he sank down a little, asking if there was a need for a second hero. The guy was talking about how the Demon King had been dead for a long time. Etna was very surprised, after which she said that she had never heard of anything like that. The girl asked if he had really been killed. Haruto started shaking. He hesitated and said that he wasn't sure, since one of the local children had told him about it recently. Etna asked if he was sure, since she thought that such news about the death of the Demon King would have caused a stir. The boy laughed and said that it was true, and maybe he had misunderstood something. Now it was about the request for the subjugation of demons. Suddenly he stopped and thought about what it all meant, that there were several demon kings. Haruto thought that if there was one for each country of people, it would be a really serious problem. Etna smiled and said that was all. Noticing Haruto's expression, she asked if there was a problem. He stopped, then clarified that he just needed to get rid of the goblins near the road. Suddenly, Haruto noticed something that made him very surprised. He turned away and pressed himself against the map, then turned to Etna and asked if she had ever heard of Andalusia. The girl was surprised by this question, after which she apologized and said that she heard about it for the first time. Haruto turned pale. He looked at the world map and thought that it did not look like the map of Andalusia at all. He was in a great panic, wondering if this was supposed to be Andalusia. Etna awkwardly asked if there was some mistake on the map. In the end, Haruto had to be at the guild by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. He also learned from Etna about the nearest inn and weapon shops. He lay in bed, thinking that he had previously thought that Andalusia was just something that few people knew about, but it seemed like he was somewhere in a completely different world. He turned on his side, not understanding why he was a little afraid. Although he couldn't read, if he remembered, the writing in Andalusia was completely different. Remembering Etna's handwriting, he thought that her writing wasn't so bad. Fell asleep. He hoped that she would forgive him for this. The entire night passed quickly enough, and Haruto's alarm went off on his phone. He yawned and turned it off, amazed that it was already morning. He wanted to wake up and be sandwiched between two beautiful girls. He blushed a little at the idea. Haruto came out of the room where he was met by another man. He noticed that the guy was already awake and then asked if he had slept enough. The guy said that he really got some sleep for the first time. In a long time, the man was happy and said that Ka would be very happy about that. Haruto took a small bite of the loaf of bread, thinking that he really was very comfortable on the soft bed. He thanked the man for the food, after which he told him to put the rest in a box that he would take with him. The man agreed and wished the boy good luck at his job. Haruto went out, thinking about one night at the inn. Not counting the food, it cost 4,000 coal. The short sword cost him 30,000 coal. Although he was in no hurry, he made it by 7:30. He walked in thinking he was a capable guy and had charm. 10 minutes had passed since the appointed time, but no one was there. Suddenly, someone entered the room while Haruto was thinking that he would be happy to work on Etna's feelings for him. Suddenly, the unknown person took a deep breath, after which she loudly greeted them and said that today she was again in their care. A surprised Etna entered the room and greeted Sharon. She said that the girl didn't have to scream so loudly. She apologized loudly. Haruto was horrified. Sharon said cheerfully that the morning greeting should be full of energy. The sweet girl said that her grandmother always told her so. Haruto looked at them and thought that yesterday he had just been told about a companion. He blushed a little, thinking that he was already tired of the solitary way. Etna said that she had to make a small clarification. She introduced Sharon to Amagi Haruto. She said that just like Sharon, he recently became an adventurer. The other day, Haruto defeated 15 bandits by himself, and he also knows how to use magic. Sharon was very excited when she heard about 15 bandits. She said that was really cool, and he was a mage, so she was just thrilled. Afterwards, Edna introduced Sharon to the guy. She noticed that Sharon had only recently become an adventurer and was now doing small jobs around town. She didn't want to let her go alone, but if they went together, there shouldn't be any problems. Haruto was a little surprised when he learned that Sharon was an adventurer like himself. He thought it was a bit unladylike, but he quickly came to terms with it. He gave his name and said he was glad to meet her. Sharon also called out her name and bowed, saying she was pleased to meet him. He smiled and thought she was glowing like a child. Together the boys took a compass and a map. They looked and noticed that the search area was marked on the map. All they had to do was go around it and get rid of the goblins. He closed the map. Since the area was quite close to the city, he probably wouldn't meet anyone strong. He turned and asked Sharon if it was time for them to go. He also asked her to call him by his first name. He pointed out that they were the same age, so there was no point in formalities. Since she had no combat experience, she should follow his instructions. The girl said briskly that she understood his instructions. Haruto smiled. And together they set out on their route. They encountered many small goblins with various weapons, who jumped out of the bushes. Sharon was a little tense. She used a short blade when she attacked. The girl closed her eyes and struck like that. After the attack, she fell to the ground and panted heavily, happy that they were finally done. Haruto turned around and said that she was doing pretty well for her first time. He handed her a handkerchief and told her to treat the wound so as not to get infected with anything. She looked at him for a moment, then kindly took the handkerchief and thanked him. Haruto wanted to use healing magic, but unfortunately he couldn't. The guy said that they should take a short break and then move on. Sharon agreed and thanked him. The girl said that Haruto was still cool because he went into the forest infested with goblins without hesitation and even gave her so many useful instructions. He smiled and said that there was absolutely nothing surprising about it, and if she got used to it, she could even cope with them alone. He said that Sharon had talent. Hearing this, the girl froze and blushed a little. She awkwardly hesitated and asked if it was true. Haruto thought that it was only a little true. He told her that Etna had said earlier that they would definitely handle this goblin-killing request. Suddenly, she asked what he was saying. She froze and looked at him, a little taken aback. Sharon admitted that he spoke like a real hero. The girl wanted to become the hero's assistant, help people during their journeys, and eventually even kill the Demon King. Haruto looked at her silently and listened. She told him that her grandmother told her that she could always help others. Haruto thought about a real hero. He didn't think a hero would need a helper at all. He didn't understand how helping a hero was such a big deal. He smiled and told Sharon that he understood what she was talking about. He wondered if there were people with similar thoughts during his journey. Sharon stood up and exclaimed that she was ready and they were on their way. Suddenly, they felt an extremely strong jolt. She turned back in amazement, wanting to know what had caused this. Behind them, they saw a huge orc. Haruto didn't understand why the monster was there. He hadn't felt its presence until now, as if it had appeared from the ground. The monster growled loudly, and Haruto thought that was bad. He grabbed Sharon by her clothes and then threw them behind his back, protecting her. The monster hit Haruto with all its might. The boy slid across the ground and fell painfully. He thought his arms were on fire, but they didn't seem broken. He looked at Sharon and thought that if she had taken the blow, she would already be dead. He asked her loudly if everything was okay. She was speechless. The girl asked with tears of fear in her eyes what it was, because it suddenly appeared behind them. The monster began to slowly approach her. Her whole body was paralyzed, and she could not move from the spot. He quickly shouted at the girl to at least do something and get up, when suddenly he noticed something surprising. Sharon's feet were wet, and she pressed herself against Haruto, while the shocked boy tried to figure out if she was serious. The monster rushed straight towards them, and Sharon warned the boy about it. He turned and managed to quickly respond to this blow. The monster tumbled backwards. Haruto turned to Sharon and told her to step back right now. She hesitated, afraid to leave him alone. He said that everything was fine and that he alone would be enough for this monster, otherwise she would only distract him. These arguments were convincing, so the girl obediently stepped back. Haruto was glad about this, thinking that now he needed to sort this out. He took a step and raised his hand, concentrating magic in it. Suddenly, some vines started to appear under the monster's feet. Haruto used earth bondage. The monster's limbs were shoved in and he roared loudly, trying to get out. He used all his strength and still managed to tear them apart. However, at that moment, he was not prepared for the sudden attack that Haruto carried out. Thanks to this, the boy was able to carry out a quick and agile attack that passed through the monster. As Haruto stood on the ground, the monster roared loudly again. The boy carefully ran his hand along the blade of his sword, thinking about how powerful it was. However, this had its flaws. He charged again, gracefully cutting through the monster's flesh. He knew that his strength as a hero was always at its best. He moved extremely quickly, striking one blow after another. It was truly an amazing sight. Haruto sighed and turned around, thinking that this was the end. However, the moment he turned around, he gasped in surprise. He saw behind the monster a small, but quite bright flash that was rushing towards the monster. In the blink of an eye, everything was filled with bright light, after which a strong explosion was heard. Haruto covered his face with his hand, not understanding what happened. He saw the monster's pitch-black body fall to the ground. The guy wasn't sure, but energy bullets usually caused such explosions. He was surprised by such magic. Suddenly, someone appeared from the bushes, worriedly asking the guy if he was okay. He was a tall, handsome guy who said he felt a surge of magical power and came there right away. When Haruto saw the guy, he immediately noticed his beauty, which he was not happy with. He thought that he did all the work, and this handsome guy just finished off the monster. Haruto pretended that he was saved, and then asked the stranger who he was. The guy said that was a bit rude. Then he said his name was Leon Van Level. Amagai Haruto introduced himself with a smile, and then Sharon slowly approached. Haruto said that everything was fine now. Leon asked her if she was okay. The girl introduced herself shyly. Haruto looked at her again and saw her wet feet again. He blushed and turned away. Suddenly, someone else emerged from the bushes. This person asked Leon if he was okay. The guy told Unicram that everything was fine and that it was no longer dangerous. The handsome guy in armor asked Leon where he was running to, since he had previously told the guy not to act so recklessly. Haruto was surprised to see another handsome guy. Unicram looked at the monster and asked if that was the reason. Leon confirmed it and said that he felt a large flow of magical power. He asked Unicram if he hadn't noticed. The man said that he hadn't noticed, since they were 3 kilometers away, and then said that it was as expected of Leon. The guy introduced his friend to Haruto and Sharon, and then said that just in case, he wanted to accompany them to the city. Leon approached Sharon and said that they had friends waiting for them on the road through the forest, and he wanted to know if they would go with them. Haruto closed the girl and asked if Leon was being too persistent, since they still had things to do. The guy exclaimed that it was dangerous, since they could be attacked by the same monster, and they should return to the city. Unicram stopped his friend and said that Leon would cause them more problems. The guy fell silent, then agreed and apologized. Leon said that they could talk another time. Haruto said that they were adventurers from Torres, and they still had to report to the guild. After that, the two new acquaintances left. Haruto blushed and asked Sharon if she had a change of clothes. The girl blushed. She hesitated and said that she had no other clothes. He said that he understood. Then he took a small handkerchief and wet it with magic. He handed it to Sharon and told her to wipe herself with it. She was amazed that he could use magic like that. She asked if he could use magic without chanting if he practiced. She was amazed. Haruto agreed and looked away, then asked her to wipe herself again. She agreed and asked the guy not to look. He walked away. Sharon lifted her skirt and began to wipe herself. Haruto tried not to look because he was polite. However, he heard everything. He could do nothing about it. She apologized for keeping him waiting and thanked the guy for his help. He agreed and said that it would be a shame to return to the city like that because they would be misunderstood. She blushed and said it was all goblins. The guy said that wasn't what he meant. She started scolding him. He made a stupid mistake when he decided to talk about mistakes again, but the girl's words sounded like a compliment. Sharon thought again and asked what this goblin could be. Haruto didn't know because he saw it for the first time. It takes many years for a monster to grow to such a size, but he had never heard of something like this happening in the blink of an eye. As the boy knew, necromancers could infuse magical power into bones and make them into their puppet, and then the creature would be reborn as an undead. He took a closer look at the monster's body and was genuinely shocked when he saw that it had no ears. He turned pale and looked at the bodies of the defeated goblins. They all had ears. Haruto wondered what that meant. Sharon asked if something had happened, since they needed to get back quickly. The guy said everything was fine and he was going. In the city, Sharon asked if they were going to tell the guild about it. The guy confirmed it. The girl started to get nervous. Haruto asked her to relax because he wouldn't tell anything unnecessary and she shouldn't worry. She smiled and thanked him. She said he was very kind. Later, Edna read their report. Haruto said that the problem was that they didn't know the reason for its appearance. Etna understood and said that the people from the guild would surely be able to find out where the goblin came from. She said that their request could be considered complete then. She praised him. Haruto was surprised and said that they had only just begun to explore the area. She smiled and said that the hero had just arrived, so their request was over. She asked him to be sure that the reward would be paid in full. Haruto began to feel nervous at the thought of the hero's appearance. After all, this really was another world. He didn't know what to do with his dream now. Today Sharon asked the guy to help him teach her how to fight. She tried her best and threw punches. However, Haruto was stronger. He touched her thigh and said that she had opened up. Sharon blushed. And instead of monetary payment, he had the opportunity to touch her. Touching her again, he thought that this was his best payment. He hugged her leg, after which she fell down and exclaimed that she had never hit. Haruto was pleased. She said he was bad. Haruto said that there was nothing he could do about it, and that was his nature. She said that someday the time would come when she would gladly punch him in the face. Haruto turned around and asked her if she knew what day it was, since today was the hero's return. She jumped up and agreed. The city was preparing for the celebration. Haruto asked if she had any plans after training. Sharon said she would go back to the guild and look at the requests. She asked if he would go with her. Haruto hesitated and said he needed to go back to the hotel. She waved and said they would meet later. He thought about it. After which he decided that it didn't matter and he would go to the guild and chat with Etna. He went into the alley and was a little surprised. There was a girl lying on the floor who was saying in her sleep that she wouldn't eat anymore. He was shocked and did not understand whether it was a fainting spell from overeating. The girl continued to say that she could not stand it any longer. Haruto didn't know how old she was. She was quite uninhibited, and Haruto blushed. But it wouldn't do her any good to lie in an alley with her underwear on display. He just couldn't pass by. He tried to wake her up and asked if everything was okay, then told her that even if she had eaten too much, it was better to sleep at home. She slowly opened her eyes and sat up, looking at the guy. She asked whose it was. Haruto was taken aback by this attitude. Her manner of speaking surprised him, and he wondered if she was really a little girl and not an old woman. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes wide and looked at him intently. Haruto said that he was just passing by. The girl asked if she had seen him before. She couldn't remember and said that it was worth forgetting. He didn't understand what was going on. She seemed strange to him. She apologized for the trouble and asked him to tell her something. The girl asked if the hero was really coming to town today. Haruto was surprised but confirmed the information because that's why the town is so noisy. She chuckled, saying that she wanted to see him. She thanked him and rushed away, saying goodbye to him. He thought that she was strange, but nice. Later on the street, Haruto called out to Sharon. He asked what was wrong. The girl in the cute dress said that Etna had helped her choose her clothes. He said the dress looked very nice. She smiled and said she wasn't sure because she had never worn a dress. She thanked him. Haruto looked at her and thought that it was really cute. He wondered if he could hold her hand. He was about to do it when suddenly she moved and pointed in the direction, then went there. He stopped her when suddenly she froze, looking in one direction. A cart was passing on the road, in which 4 people were standing. They were waving to everyone and smiling. Sharon was amazed and said that Leon was a hero. Haruto was upset because now he was late. Suddenly, the boy was surprised, because when he was a hero, there were 2 guys in his group, an old man and a beast man. He thought about what kind of injustice this was. Suddenly, some man tried to go further and pushed the guys hard. Sharon pressed herself against the guy and gasped. Haruto blushed and thought that this was the perfect moment. He almost took her hand, when suddenly a loud laugh was heard. Someone stepped forward and asked who was the hero. It was the same girl Haruto had met in the alley. The girl stood brazenly in front of the carriage. She said that her name was Laurier von Steinhardt, and that she was a demon. Hearing this, Haruto was surprised that this old woman was a demon, and she could also fly. Sharon asked the guy if it was true. Laurier asked what kind of reaction this was. And where are their cries of horror? Because it looks more like bewilderment. She agreed, after which she laughed. Leon introduced himself as a hero and asked what business the demon had with him. Hearing this, she was a little surprised, then frowned. After all, you can't understand it so easily at first glance. She raised her hand and exclaimed to the hero that she was challenging him to a duel. Leon got out of the carriage, somewhat surprised by this unexpected proposal. He said that the city would not go to battle. The place outside was not right, but there was a suitable site to the east. He asked her opinion. Laurier agreed to it. Sharon asked if Haruto would go, and then said that she would go with him too. The guy agreed and said that she was wearing a dress and did not have a weapon. She was a little taken aback, but understood him. After a while, Leon met Laurier on the platform. Haruto was watching all this. The girl smiled, offering to begin. She asked if they had decided and if they would all attack together. Leon raised his sword and said that it was a challenge to a fair duel. Leon said he would fight alone. Unicram turned to his friend and said that he could always call for help. Leon said that he knew. Laurier praised him and said that he had better remember to call for help in time when the situation became really dangerous. Leon exclaimed the name of the demon girl and said that he, the hero of the Holy Sword, Leon Van Level, was ready to fight. Laurier smirked. They rushed at each other with attacks, shouting along the way that this was a battle for victory or death. The girl folded her hand into a fist and addressed the entity that filled the world. She ordered it to protect her, after which a strong shield appeared around her. The hero's sword met him and bounced back. The boy was shocked by what he saw. Haruto and Sharon were also surprised by the barrier that Laurier was able to create. Leon fell to the ground. After which he jumped up again and tried to hit Laurier, but she still gracefully created a shield, thanks to which she was not harmed. Haruto found himself thinking that she was a great fighter. He wondered what the difference was between monsters and demons. Demons use monsters for their own purposes. Demons are loners, while monsters prefer packs. Demons are closer to humans in appearance, while monsters are closer to animals. The only difference between demons and monsters was interesting. Suddenly, Leon decided to use mages. He turned to the magic of the Holy Sword, commanding it to fill him with power. Noticing this, Laurier smirked. Leon commanded the magic to fill the sword with power and fight his enemy. Using the light of the heavens, he rushed at Laurier. Haruto wondered if this was the sword's main power. As Leon's power flew towards Laurier, she smiled widely. The girl easily dodged and got rid of the hero's attack. Leon was confused, not understanding how this was possible. Haruto thought that demons were superior to monsters in strength. Laurier asked mockingly what was wrong. She wondered if he would surprise her with anything else. Sharon asked what was going on. Haruto said that the outcome of the fight was predetermined. Sharon asked if he was okay. Laurier said Leon was a hero, and a hero uses his true power for the good of others. He was surprised. Laurier smirked and said that she should have started by defeating his companions. Leon cursed at this, and Laurier was already gone. Suddenly, Leon turned pale. The boy's friends were surprised when they suddenly noticed that Unicram's armor was pierced and blood was flowing from his mouth. Laurier had wounded him. Unicram fell flat on the ground, unconscious. Leon was stunned. He rushed to attack Laurier. The girl noticed that his strength had increased. She looked at the hero's other friends and said that he was still weak. Leon cursed again. Laurier was not immediately rushed to attack Laurier. He exclaimed with great anger, indicating to the girl that she should not even dare to touch Aura and Coraline. Laurier was not affected by his attack because of the shield. She smirked. Having learned the name of Leon's companions, she asked if his strength would increase if she healed them a little for now. The embittered hero ordered her to be silent and said that he would not allow her to do so. Haruto closed his eyes, somewhat shocked by what was happening. He immediately noticed that Laurier had provoked Leon, and he had fallen for it so easily. The hero was clearly not the type to say in such a situation that he expected it to be like this. Laurier raised her hand and, commanding with her name, summoned a blast wave. The hero was badly wounded in the chest and fell. He cursed. His friends immediately came up and looked at him with concern. Laurier sighed deeply, saying that the hero had been so battered. She said it was disappointing. She looked away, asking why she had ever expected anything more from him. Suddenly, their eyes met Laurier's. Laurier smiled and said that he was the same guy she had met not long ago. Haruto smiled and said that he hadn't thought she was a demon back then. Sharon looked at her friend in confusion. Haruto turned to the girl and asked if it was fate that they met again. He said that perhaps in honor of this event, she should leave. Hearing this, Laurier looked up and thought about his proposal, then said that he might be right. Suddenly, her gaze became somewhat empty, and she said with a smile that this would not do, because she still wanted to see everything that the hero was capable of. In the blink of an eye, she jumped up and tried to attack Haruto, but he had a quick enough reaction and blocked the attack. Laurier was seriously surprised when she saw this. Haruto turned to Sharon and shouted at the girl that she needed to get out of there immediately. He swung his sword, knocking Laurier away from himself. When the demon was back on the ground, he turned to her. Laurier noted that the guy was quite capable. She immediately said that he was stronger than the same hero. Haruto thought that he had to defeat this demoness, and to be honest, it would be hard to do it alone, but he had to win no matter what. She was laughing at the same time. He took the hilt of his sword and took a deep breath, preparing to start the fight. Haruto quickly summoned his earthly bonds and commanded them to bind the girl. She was surprised, but amused. She smirked and said that this was quite interesting magic. She swung her leg and quickly tore the bonds apart. By this time, Haruto was right in front of the girl. He swung his sword as she tried to say something. She was surprised and created a shield, but Haruto continued his attack, causing Laurier's defense to slowly crack, causing her to panic. In the blink of an eye, her shield shattered completely, and Haruto broke through her defense. She grabbed his sword with her hand, causing her to be covered in blood. Haruto was a little surprised when his gaze caught on the surroundings. He let go of one hand and grabbed Laurier with it. The people who had gathered around were shocked by the simply incredible strength of these people. Laurier smiled and noticed that Haruto was indeed strong. He thanked her for her kind words. At that moment, he summoned his bonds again, trapping Laurier. She hadn't expected it. She asked in amazement how that was possible. She turned and was surprised to see that he could cast spells without even chanting. While the girl was busy talking, Haruto didn't waste time. He made a quick swing with his sword, which wounded Laurier. The girl froze while blood began to splatter in the air. Haruto looked at her calmly. In the blink of an eye, Laurier's hand fell to the ground with a loud sound. It rolled for a bit before coming to a stop. Haruto slowly turned around and looked at it, thinking that such wounds on demons would heal completely in a couple of days. Laurier's face was filled with mixed emotions. Haruto thought that she was at least incapable of aiming instantly now. Laurier, however, was not going to give up. She raised her remaining hand into the air and was about to cast another spell. Haruto quickly rushed towards her and began to attack her with his sword one after another, wondering if she really thought he would let her do this. Laurier was genuinely shocked. She slowly retreated back. Haruto launched one attack after another, not giving Laurier a chance to rest at all. In the end, her other arm was injured to the point that it was bleeding all over. She screamed loudly, but Haruto did not think to stop. The girl cried out in fear for him to stop and stop. She waved one of her hands and said that she was giving up and had already lost, so he should stop. It was only at this very moment that Haruto decided to slow down his attacks a little. He slowly lowered his sword and asked the girl if she understood that, since she had already admitted defeat, her life would be the collateral. She quickly shook her head and said that she agreed. She raised her index finger and showed him that he could see for himself that she had practically lost her right arm. Afterwards, Laurier looked at her remaining limb rather intensely and said that her left arm was very badly damaged. She put her hand on her side and sighed, asking how he dared to do such a thing to a small and weak girl. These words angered Haruto, and he wondered if she was mocking him. After that, she smiled widely and said that it was okay because he was strong. The girl noticed that for the first time in a long time she was actually able to enjoy the fight. Haruto awkwardly looked away and said that maybe that was true, but he was not the type K gets pleasure from such things. He raised his head proudly, as if giving her a lesson. Laurier asked in honest bewilderment if it wasn't fun to fight. She asked if he was really that crazy. After that, she laughed again quite loudly and happily, saying that she had lost on all counts after all. Leon looked at the girl with a completely confused expression as she talked about how she had been looking for someone stronger than her for a long time, and now she had fallen in love with him, who was able to defeat her in a fair fight. She winked at Haruto and said that she would serve him from now on, and he should be grateful. Hearing this, Haruto didn't understand the full meaning of her words at first, but the moment he fully understood everything, he gasped loudly without understanding it. It was a very hot and very sunny day. Haruto opened the door of his house, then laid the sleeping Laurier on the bed and fell to the floor from exhaustion. He looked at her and thought that he had to take revenge for being pushed off his own bed. Haruto remembered that yesterday she had lost her right arm and had seriously injured her first one, and this sight could not cause him much excitement. However, he thought that it was also his own fault. Haruto looked at the girl, after which he gently touched her. The guy pressed his index finger on her skin and looked at it. After that, he took her fully in his hand and squeezed her while she was fast asleep. Haruto thought that yesterday, after the fight, she told him that she fell in love with him, and so he decided to accept her love for himself. It was all because Laurier was a beauty and also a demon. He continued to touch her, thinking that she would be a perfect addition to his future harem. Naturally, Leon was far from happy with this outcome, but Haruto still managed to convince them. In the end, it was Haruto who defeated her, so they didn't really have a choice in the first place. Leon sighed and smiled awkwardly and said that he had nothing to say in response to that. Haruto looked up and thought that this was exactly what one would expect from a hero. Laurier smiled and said that sometimes it was even good to feel the bitterness of defeat. After that, Haruto lightly hit her on the head, as if giving a warning. Sharon, for her part, looked rather offended by the situation that had developed. She pouted and looked away from Haruto. Noticing this behavior, the guy was quite flattered. He thought that this was quite an interesting turn of events. Noticing Haruto's sly smile on his face, Sharon blushed deeply and punched him in the stomach, saying that everything was not at all as he might think. Laurier, in turn, saw this blow and stopped Sharon in admiration, saying that this girl was really able to hit Haruto. She turned to Sharon and said that she, too, was incredibly amazing. Sharon looked at Laurier with some discomfort. She saw the little demon with a bloody hand and a wide smile reaching out to her. It was natural that this would be a shock to the timid Sharon. She flinched, but did not retreat from the little Laurier. Haruto could guess that the demon was quite young. It seemed that her age was not much different from how old she looked. He took a deep breath and thought that, in truth, he had initially thought that Laurier was already several centuries old at least. Little Laurier doesn't remember her parents at all. All she remembers is how she ended up in the middle of the forest south of the city. She just lived her life, fighting and defeating all the demons and monsters she encountered. After this, the girl heard that a hero existed and immediately headed to Torres. Haruto thought about the incident in the forest that happened to him and Sharon. He thought that there seemed to be a monster that Laurier had given demonic powers to test himself, but even then she had defeated it with one blow. Having lost interest in him, Laurier simply teleported the monster to a random location. Haruto wondered if this was their old goblin friend. He turned away, realizing that it was her fault. He looked quite angry when he realized it, and her behavior had been quite strange the first time they met. He remembered Laurier's words about her seeming to have seen him somewhere before. He removed his hands, thinking that it was good that everything had ended well. He walked away and found himself thinking that it would be good to solve the riddle. Haruto smiled. If he could knock some common sense into Laurier, then she would be able to live among people like him. Suddenly, he heard the girl shift a little. He looked at her and saw that she had spread her legs wide in her sleep. He was amazed. Haruto blushed and looked away awkwardly, thinking that he might as well try just a little bit. He was worried about whether it would be okay. His hands began to shake violently, and suddenly Laurier looked at him and asked what he was doing. She squeezed her hands tightly, immobilizing the boy. Haruto was at a loss and tried to find his words. Laurier remembered that earlier he had said that he was not aroused by a young girl like her. She said that he himself had started to have fun with her while she was peacefully sleeping. She smiled and asked how he could. Haruto apologized with a trembling voice. She touched his face and said that everything was fine. Laurier hugged him tightly and said that yesterday she had decided that she would be his property and he could play with her as he wished. Haruto blushed, not understanding if she was serious. He had always wanted a harem, but now that he was so close to the desired result, he was worried. He wondered if he really wouldn't dare try her suggestion. Very nervous, he approached Laurier's face, intending to kiss the girl. Just before this happened, the door of his room opened loudly. a red Sharon stood in the doorway, asking the guy what they had been doing since early in the morning. The girl exclaimed that it was time for them to go to training, and he needed to walk faster. Laurier asked what was wrong with Sharon, since she had been so energetic since the morning. Haruto sighed and smiled, thinking that it was really cute. Sharon stood obediently before Laurier, who in turn extended her hand to cast some kind of spell. Sharon rose slightly into the air, feeling her body float. Laurier was completely focused on her spell. Sharon's body began to shake. She opened her mouth and asked what it was, because it was simply unbelievable. She gasped loudly and asked again what it was, saying that it was simply amazing. She noted that she felt some kind of force entering her. Haruto stood silently nearby and watched this unusual process. The boy smiled awkwardly and thought that today they were practicing strengthening the body with magic. Laurier suggested that he pass on the strengthening magic to Sharon. If everything went well, then it seemed that his face would be in danger. Sharon's words sounded ambiguous, and because of the morning's entertainment, everything seemed like that to Haruto. Laurier smiled and said they were done, then asked Sharon to move so they could know if everything had gone well. Immediately after this, Sharon did as Laurier asked and began to move her arms and body quickly. She was doing it much better than before. Haruto looked at this and thought that it was really incredible. It was obvious to him that her attack and defense had increased many times. Sharon looked at Laurier happily and said with a wide smile that she had done it, and she had done it. She felt that with such power, she would succeed. Sharon hugged the demon tightly and thanked her for it. Laurier laughed, then agreed and said that it would be proof of the connection between them. Haruto thought that they had become friends very quickly, and it was good that they had become friends. He had a feeling that the topic was worth returning half of the fee Sharon had paid. The magic of magical power enhancement that Sharon learned. If mastered, it would give the effect of 10 years of rigorous training. He learned it from the special training in his last adventure. He was a former hero after all. Suddenly, Sharon addressed Haruto as a teacher and with a sly smile asked him for a duel. She said that, as before, she was counting on him in this matter. She looked very prepared for this fight. Haruto wondered if she was serious. He didn't fully understand why he felt afraid. He smiled, thinking that it couldn't be helped. He was a man after all, and if she wanted it, then it would be as she wanted. He told her to attack. Within 10 minutes, Sharon was completely defeated, and Haruto was standing behind her, holding the girl. Laurier exclaimed that this was not enough. After that, Sharon fell to the floor and exclaimed that she had lost again. Laurier noted that she sympathized with her, but the girl had fought well. She looked at Haruto with a smile and said that if she learned to handle magic better, she could defeat him. The guy thought that was really scary. Laurier reached out to Haruto and asked the boy to fight her now. He sternly refused, because her arm had not yet recovered, and they should fight another time. Laurier was displeased when suddenly Haruto said goodbye. He thought about how Laurier could use body enhancement magic silently, but she had a hard time adjusting to other magic. Being a resident of this world, it was hard to let go of the prejudice that magic didn't require long speeches. Haruto turned to the girl and asked with interest how she was able to transmit magical power. Because he saw something like this for the first time, Laurier thought about it. After that, Laurier smiled broadly and said that she didn't know either. Haruto thought that asking her any questions would probably be a waste of time. He looked at them and thought that he was trying to master a new spell, and he was on the verge of success. But there were problems. Laurier asked what they were supposed to do there. Sharon did not understand why they came to the sea. She asked if they would train. Haruto grinned and said that she was wrong, because in the summer there could only be one training session at the sea. He unbuttoned his shirt, and he quickly took it off. He exclaimed that the only thing to do at the sea in the summer was swim. Sharon blushed and asked what he was doing. Laurier didn't understand what she was talking about. Since she was going to swim, it was natural that she would undress. Sharon said that she didn't think they would swim, so she didn't bring a bathing suit. Haruto sighed and asked if they had agreed that they were responsible for being ready for the trip. He told her to look for herself. There was no one around at all, and no one would see her there, so there was no problem. She blushed and said that there was Haruto himself, which was the main problem. The guy smiled and thought that this was what was expected, even if she was right about something. He turned to Laurier and asked if she needed any clothes for swimming. She thought about it and said she would do so. After all, the point of bathing wouldn't change. Sharon was surprised and tried to stop the girl. Laurier said that if she only saw Haruto, then everything would be fine. Sharon asked the girl to cover at least her chest. Laurier asked what was wrong, since Haruto's chest was showing too. Sharon, flushed with embarrassment, said that boys and girls were different. Laurier said she didn't mind taking off her underwear, but Haruto was wearing them, so I guess it was supposed to be that way. Sharon looked away and said she understood. She took her things and went to the side where she began to take off her clothes. Haruto thought it was a fascinating sight. When she finished, Haruto blushed. Sharon covered herself and told the guy that he was staring so long and so intently that she felt awkward. Haruto blushed deeply as he watched his girlfriend. Suddenly, Laurier came up behind him. She smirked and told him not to be selfish and not to touch her. After that, Sharon ran up to her and took her hand. With a smile on her face, she suggested that Laurier have some fun. They looked at Haruto together and said that they would leave him there. The guy was very confused. He raised one hand and awkwardly told them that he would go to them too. Sharon gave him an angry look and said that a man like him should swim alone. Laurier was very amused and laughed loudly. She asked Sharon not to say such cruel things. She said that Haruto should also have fun with them. However, if a man saw her like this, he deserved to die 1,000 times. Haruto awkwardly approached them, and together they went into the water. Even though Haruto was Laurier's master, who liked to touch sleeping girls, Sharon was stunned and asked what she was talking about. Laurier reminded her friend about the day she pretended to be asleep. Haruto blushed to his ears and asked the girl to stop talking about it. When they were finally tired, they came out of the water and lay down together to rest. After that, they returned to the city and entered the guild. Haruto opened the door and immediately heard Etna's greeting. The girl smiled sweetly. She told the extremely happy Haruto that she had been waiting for him for a long time. The guy smiled and wondered if it was true and if she really wanted to see him. At this time, Sharon looked at them skeptically. Etna smiled and said that she had a personal task specifically for Haruto, and it came from the capital department of the guild. The guy was upset because it turned out that she was talking strictly about business. Afterwards, Etna led Haruto and his two companions to the guildmaster's room. A rather old man was sitting in a chair in front of the boys. He said that he was the guildmaster of the city of Torres, and his name was Kryze. The man clasped his hands and said that he had already heard rumors about the guy, and they were all positive. Etna stood quietly nearby and smiled. Sharon introduced herself awkwardly and rather nervously, and then said that she was pleased to meet him. Laurier von Steinhardt proudly gave her full name and said that she was now the property of Haruto. Kryze smiled and shook his head, saying that the girls with Haruto were really cute. Suddenly, his face became more stern, and he looked at them carefully. He said that he wanted to clarify something first. He recalled that during the hero's second visit to the city, he had a fight with a certain demon. He looked at Laurier and asked if this was the girl. Haruto calmly confirmed this information and asked if there was any problem with it. Kryze awkwardly said that it was not like that at all and he did not want any problems. The guildmaster explained that he only wanted to satisfy his curiosity. He picked up the papers and said that the mission was that the capital wanted Haruto to come there and become a trainer. Hearing this, Haruto was surprised and wondered what kind of trainer and who he would train there. The guildmaster reminded that on the very day the demon attacked the hero, he, in turn, could do nothing about it. In contrast to this, Haruto stands up, who dealt with a fairly strong demon perfectly. Laurier proudly agreed and said that her hero was a huge disappointment. Haruto hit the impudent girl on the head and told her not to speak like that. Laurier was unhappy with this remark, but did not argue. The guildmaster cleared his throat and said that basically, the hero, Leon, who currently resides in the capital, personally wants Haruto to come and become his trainer. The guildmaster smiled as he told the details of the request. Sharon looked at Haruto with admiration and said that he was simply amazing because he would soon become the teacher of the hero himself. Laurier was also pleased. She said that they also appreciated his strength and she should like living in the capital. Haruto also thought about this proposal. He knew that he would have to visit her soon anyway. The appointment of a hero as a trainer was interesting, but Haruto had serious doubts about how everything would go. After his victory over the demon lord in Andalusia, they wanted to make a political toy out of him. He was not interested in politics at all, but no one asked his opinion. Haruto was wanted by various political forces, and they even tried to simply kill him. In the end, it all ended with him being forcibly exiled to the earth, which turned out to be a very unpleasant event for him. Being honest with himself, he now wanted to stay as far away from the people in power as possible. He was not a famous hero now. This time, he was just a capable adventurer who was invited to be a hero's trainer, as Old Man Cry said, and the reward for this was generous. His eyes sparkled at the thought that he would be visiting the castle grounds in the capital often, which meant that there would be many maids there. And since they work in the palace, they must be the best of the best. When he was a hero, he was too young to understand their charm, and he did not ask them to call him Lord. He was inspired by the thought that this time he would not make such a mistake. Noticing his ardor, Sharon asked if it would be okay if she went to the capital with him too. Haruto was at a loss. He smiled and said that if she didn't go, he would immediately abandon the mission. That's why he asked Sharon to go with him. The girl was confused, but quickly agreed. Laurier also said that it was natural that Sharon was going with them. As one of Haruto's women, she couldn't help but go. Sharon blushed and stopped Laurier. She asked what she was saying on the street. Laurier apologized and said she was just looking forward to tonight, because tonight Haruto would finally take her. Sharon was horrified. Haruto was angry at her for what she said. His goal was the harem, and he couldn't back down now. He said he didn't see anything wrong with that kind of thing. He blushed and said that Sharon and Laurier belonged to him. Haruto looked at her with a smile and said that it was natural that he wanted to do this with them. Sharon blushed even more. Sharon blushed deeply at his words and was speechless. Laurier quietly agreed and shook her head. Haruto noticed the girl's unusual reaction and turned to her, asking if she was okay. Sharon was surprised when the guy asked her about her condition. The girl, red from embarrassment, looked away and waved her hands, saying that everything was fine and she was fine. She tried to connect her thoughts while Haruto looked at her in confusion. Sharon turned away and quickly ran away, saying that she had to return to the room immediately. Laurier asked what was wrong with her, because she looked like a burning troll. Haruto was surprised that Laurier asked. He wondered if she had decided to stay and not go with them. He didn't know if he should worry. He waved it off, thinking that everything would be fine. At night, he took a deep breath, then screamed loudly. He was breathing heavily. Laurier looked out the door and said she hadn't heard anything. Haruto was glad it had worked out. This is not a combat magic, but a sound-absorbing magic. Laurier sat down on the bed. Haruto explained that this magic was created to hide all sounds, including voices. Laurier asked why they needed her. Haruto said it was a stupid question and they would need her tonight. Laurier was surprised. She said that every night he did nothing more than touch her, and she thought he was being faithful to Sharon. He was afraid that voices would be heard. They lay down, and she asked him what he called this magic. She smiled. Haruto thought it might be a love field. He became nervous and tried to kiss Laurier, thinking that it would just be a space of silence. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Sharon stood there. Haruto asked what happened. He thought she wanted to take Laurier away so he wouldn't touch her. Sharon was silent, so he asked her again. She squeezed his hand and said that she would go too and be with them. Haruto was shocked. He looked at her nervously and tried to think about everything she said. Laurier noticed that Sharon had come too. She called her friend over so that the three of them could do it together. She said that even if it was her first time, she was ready. Sharon awkwardly said that it was her first time too. Haruto hugged them and wondered if it was true. He noticed the extremely pleasant feeling of their hands. Haruto was already happy from hugging them. He pulled Sharon by the waist. She was surprised by his actions, after which she closed her eyes and reached out to him. Haruto kissed her gently. Then he looked at Laurier. Since they were inexperienced, their kisses were just a brush of lips. After that, he kissed Laurier, who blushed from it. No matter how much he did, he would never get tired of it. This feeling that from this moment, everything interesting was just beginning. The guys took off their clothes, and so the night began. The bright and warm morning came rather quickly. The sun's rays penetrated the room through the medium-sized window. 3 young people were lying in bed under one blanket. Haruto slowly opened his eyes and winced. He noticed that he was getting a little out of breath. Suddenly, the boy opened his eyes wide. He realized the situation. There were 2 girls lying on either side of him. He raised his head slightly and thought that he had been awakened by the feeling of suffocation, and that was the reason for his feeling. He lay back down, thinking that their bed was quite narrow and the 2 of them were very cramped on it. Suddenly, he blushed a little, looking at the girls. He squeezed his hand slightly, after which Sharon and Laurier blushed. He touched them lightly. Suddenly, one of them opened her eyes. Sharon looked very sleepy. She rubbed her eyes when Haruto wished her good morning and asked how she was feeling. She blushed and looked back, then said that everything was more or less fine, although she still felt some discomfort in her lower part from the night. Suddenly she shuddered. She felt awkward. Frustré-feed. Haruto put his arm around them. Laurier smiled and said that he had been very active last night and that he was already starting to show initiative this morning. She said that he never seemed to get tired. Haruto smiled lightly and said that he believed that he still had a lot of strength. Suddenly, Sharon and Laurier noticed something and blushed deeply. After that, Haruto kissed Sharon and they continued. Thus, their morning was quite hot. Haruto completely forgot to use the magic of the space of silence. When they left, the tenant of the room, with a smile and a slight blush, joked about this, which greatly embarrassed Sharon. After that, they all left, and the tenant was approached by his own girlfriend, who looked unhappy. Before leaving the city, Etna said with a smile and tears in her eyes that it was time for them to say goodbye. She remarked that she was very sorry that they had to part. Etna firmly stated that she would miss the three of them, but the imperial capital was quite close, so she was sure that they would definitely meet again together. Haruto grabbed Etna's hands and agreed with a glint in his eyes. He said that since they would definitely meet, the girl didn't have to start a relationship during that time. Hearing this, Etna blushed a little. Sharon looked at Etna with great displeasure, while Laurier watched Haruto's expression in confusion. An awkward silence followed. The guildmaster and Etna handed Haruto a small scroll and politely asked him to take it with him to the royal palace. The man said with a slight smile that although Haruto's identity had already been confirmed by the guild card, the guildmaster had written recommendations just in case. With them, the boy would be able to enter the palace without any problems. Etna smiled broadly and told Haruto to try hard in the capital. Sharon waved at them with a smile and thanked them for everything they had done for them. Laurier smiled as they were thanked too. They set off. As they walked, the silhouettes of Etna and the guildmaster gradually became more distant until they disappeared from their sight completely. Haruto looked at the sky and wondered if he would have written this letter if there hadn't been an official request. He pushed those thoughts away, because the good thing was that everything had worked out well. They were riding on a carriage. Haruto thought that Torres was the first city he visited in this world. Laurier yawned while Sharon quietly looked at Haruto. The guy thought that it was in this place that he met Laurier and Sharon. He decided that he would definitely return to this city and find more girls next time. He must succeed in creating his harem. Suddenly, Sharon looked at the boy a little awkwardly and turned to him. Haruto sighed and said that it was time for them to go to the imperial capital. The kingdom of Milis is the imperial capital of militias. The boys arrived at the capital of the royal family for the special training of the hero Leon. Upon arrival, the boys were very impressed by the beautiful views of the kingdom. They talked about how amazing the capital was. Sharon noted at the time she came to Torres, the city seemed magnificent to her, but the capital simply amazed her with all its grandeur. The capital of the kingdom is the heart of this incredible place, and it is here that all roads from all possible cities converge. The city is much larger than Torres. It has many more mansions and streets, and it is also home to the royal palace. It can be called the oldest and most important city in the entire kingdom. It was there that the headquarters of various organizations and guilds were located, and there was the headquarters of the Church of Harmony, which gave the hero the sword. Haruto looked around the city a little and noticed a somewhat remarkable building. He assumed that it was a church. He took a few steps towards it and gasped in surprise. Suddenly, he heard some light voices, which sent a slight shiver down his spine. He was surprised and looked around. The guy scratched his head and assumed that it seemed like some strange voices were coming from the church. He decided not to pay much attention to it, thinking that his imagination was just running wild. He told the girls that he had completely forgotten to tell them that he would be the one speaking, and that they should remain silent during this time. If they still needed to say something, they should stick to simple and neutral phrases. They agreed and said that they understood Haruto. When they approached the entrance to the building they needed, a girl in a wide dress with a black skirt said that they had been waiting for them for a long time. The maid smiled at them and pointed to the door they should go through. Haruto lit up, because it was she, the maid. Afterwards, she explained to the boys some more details that they should take into account. Haruto politely thanked the girl for her help, after which they, together with Laurier and Sharon, entered the door. This door led them to a large corridor. Right after they entered, someone addressed Haruto and his companions. A certain girl greeted the adventurer from Torres City with a smile. The girl in the neat dress, with two servants standing behind her, introduced herself. Her name was Rufina Milicia Gracia. This beautiful girl was the third princess of the kingdom. She smiled widely and said that she had been waiting for Amaji Haruto for a long time. The guy felt a certain awkwardness and said that he was also glad to meet her. Hearing that she was a princess, he noted that his thoughts were confirmed. His gaze accidentally fell on her chest, and then he thought that it was extremely large. He remarked that it would be simply wonderful if he could have a nice evening with the princess and the maids. This would be an absolutely amazing piece of paradise for Haruto. His gaze relaxed a little as he thought about it, although he also noted that, frankly, such dreams were simply indecent. Suddenly, the door behind the boy opened and Leon appeared. He greeted the princess politely. The boy was also accompanied by a girl who was dressed in knight's armor. She apologized for the intrusion and said that she was a knight named Aura Rose. The princess told them that they were waiting for them. After that, she politely asked them to sit next to her. Haruto looked around and thought that this girl's name was Aura, which was a bit unusual. They sat down at the table together. Haruto was told what the job of training the hero and Ko would consist of. The term was 3 months. This term was due to the planned operation to destroy some demon. Rufina smiled and said that it was just incredible luck that Amaji Haruto was in Torres at the right moment. The guy smiled and said that he would do his best, as far as it was possible in his power. Leon said that today was their 3rd meeting, and he understood that he had done something unforgivable during the first meeting. There was no need for his intervention then. Although belated, Leon apologized for his behavior during that awkward moment. Haruto said that the guy had nothing to apologize for, because everything was really fine. Suddenly, the guy noticed how the princess was quietly laughing. He turned around and was very surprised to see Laurier asleep at the table. He immediately apologized to the princess for his friend's behavior. Rufina smiled and said that everything was fine. The girl also politely asked Haruto to address her simply by her name and not by her title. Haruto smiled and said that, in that case, he would be very happy if she called him more simply. The princess followed Haruto's request and called him as he wanted, after which she asked if she did it correctly. She agreed with a smile and said that she even had the feeling that they were friends. After that, she called him by his name again. She said that she hoped that he could help Leon and his team become stronger. In order to make his life easier in the castle, she assigned him a personal servant girl. Haruto was surprised, but did not ask. The princess immediately called Mina into the room. The door opened slightly, and a nice girl entered the room. Rufina said that despite the fact that she was new to the palace, this girl was very capable. In addition, her age was close to Haruto, so it would be much easier for them to get along. This was the girl who had met Haruto and his companions in the palace a while ago. She said that her name was Mina Hereafter, and that she was happy to help him. She had a tail and cat ears. She said that she was already at his disposal. Haruto blushed and thought that this was the girl who had met them a while ago. It was only at that moment that he noticed her tail. He quickly realized that she was a member of the beast race. Mina smiled and said that she would take them to his room and he should follow her. She explained to him that this used to be one of the emperor's residences. The house looked just wonderful. Now this residence has been converted into a light guest house. Mina showed the guy a room with a large bed and said that they could use everything in the house. And if they needed anything, they just had to ring the bell that was in each room. She said that in that case, she would come immediately. Haruto blushed, thinking that he was already looking forward to this night. Sharon saw this and blushed, understanding what he was thinking. Later, at Sharon's request, they decided to start assigning rooms. Laurier didn't quite understand the reasons for this and asked if she and Haruto would sleep together. The guy stroked the uncomprehending Laurier on the head. Walking through the house, Haruto noticed an interesting door. He opened it and saw a long staircase that led somewhere down. He walked along it and thought that it seemed like there was a basement there. Suddenly, he saw another door and tried to open it, but it was locked. He used search magic. It is a magic that, when released, the surrounding environment is examined. When he opened the door, he was extremely surprised by what he saw. It was a torture chamber. Later, he changed his mind and called it something more interesting. He blushed and laughed, realizing why it was locked. Haruto closed the door back and thought that he wasn't going to do that. He looked at the girls and thought that if he handcuffed Sharon or Laurier and then used the handcuffs, it would be interesting. He imagined it and thought it would be interesting, but he tried to come to his senses and calm down. He slapped himself in the face, trying to calm down. The girls looked at him in bewilderment. Later, evening came. The boys' table was beautifully set, and they enjoyed their food while Mina watched with a smile. Later, the boys were able to relax well by going to the hot springs. Suddenly, Haruto's gaze stopped at Sharon's neck. He stared at it for a while and then blushed. Suddenly, Laurier hugged him. He looked at her and asked what was wrong. She smiled and said that everything was fine. She just really liked sleeping curled up on him, so she thought that the bathroom would be just as nice. And Sharon came up and hugged Haruto too, which greatly surprised the guy. At that moment, he thought he couldn't hold back any longer. Suddenly, the door opened and Mina walked in. She noticed that they had entered the bathroom, so she came to rub their backs. Suddenly, she was very surprised to see Haruto there. She asked in surprise why Haruto was there. Her tongue began to slur. She tried to justify herself. Finding no more excuses for herself, she blushed and ran out in shame. She apologized profusely as she left the room. Watching her leave, Haruto thought that she had just made a sound, just like a cat. Laurier noted how noisy this girl was. After leaving the bathroom, Haruto found Mira with a deep bow and apology. He explained the situation about his relationship with those girls. Mina said that she understood and mentioned that she had heard before that Haruto was a very strong man, so she should have guessed that something like this could happen. He wondered if that meant she thought it was okay for a strong man to have multiple girls. However, Haruto himself thought that polygamy was a very good thing. That night, they hugged each other in bed again, and Haruto thought that there was one more thing they should have done before going to sleep. He looked at them, thinking that they had been riding in a carriage for 2 whole days to get from Torres to the capital. And then, just recently, in the bathroom, they had been interrupted at the most interesting possible moment. The bed in the palace was simply magnificent, in Haruto's opinion. It creaked loudly all night. Haruto also noted that the mattress was very high quality and elastic. And so, another morning arrived. The boys slept peacefully all together, and when the sun had already risen, they went outside and saw many knights fencing. They apologized and said that they had heard earlier that Amaji Haruto was an adventurer with amazing abilities. However, it was one thing to hear about it, and quite another to see it with your own eyes. They both surrounded him and asked if Haruto could demonstrate his skills in combat. Aura noticed all of this. She turned to them and exclaimed that Amaji was personally invited by the hero, and that the man's words were insulting. Haruto waved his hand and smiled, saying that everything was fine. He took out his sword and asked how about crossing swords in a sparring match. They all raised their swords enthusiastically and asked the boy for this battle. Haruto also raised his sword and stretched it out in front of him to engage in combat with the knights. The men laughed, saying they wouldn't mind a fight, and then attacked the boy. It wasn't long before the attackers were defeated by the boy and lay defeated before him. Haruto sighed, thinking that they were definitely weaklings. The girl behind him looked at this in surprise. The soldiers simply rushed at the enemy, and it seemed that this style of fighting was considered the norm on the continent. Then he said that he wanted to see what they were capable of, so he proposed a fight each with each, and then, warning that deadly magic was forbidden and swords should only be wooden. And so the training battle between Haruto and Leon began. The others watched with interest as the two fought bravely with swords. Haruto attacked the boy, who defended himself from his attack and then pushed him away, but the boy regrouped, crouching on the ground, and then attacked Leon again, who was not expecting the attack. Leon's sword flew to the side, leaving him without a weapon. Everyone looked at the unfolding situation in surprise. Haruto looked at his opponent, and then asked him to answer why he was giving up so quickly, to which he replied that he couldn't use magic, so without a weapon, he was helpless. The boy sighed, saying that he would teach him to think differently. Then he threw his sword into his hands, telling the boy to watch carefully. And while he was a little confused, Haruto kicked him in the stomach with all his might, causing him to utter curse words. And again, the guy's action caused surprise among the girls. He then asked Leon to note that he had dealt with him with his bare hands, saying that even if he had lost his weapon, the boy could somehow distract the enemy. He walked up to the sword that was sticking out of the ground and, pulling it out, said that there was always the opportunity to pick up a weapon. And while Leon was being put in order, Haruto thought that although it was unpleasant, it would be a good example for the hero. He then turned to the girls, saying that the same applied to the 3 of them, saying that their tactics were too straightforward. He then suggested that they try to come up with unconventional ways to deal with the enemy. The girls agreed with the guy, while the guy thought that he was a real teacher. And while the guy was thinking about this, the priestess called him, threatening him for offending Leon. Haruto asked Leon to repeat it again, and the boy slowly agreed with him, and Haruto thought that boys always had it harder. As he walked down the street, he thought about how little Amagi had learned about the church this month. He hid around the corner. The headquarters of the Church of Harmony was in the capital. It was the largest religious structure, playing a significant role in the life of the country. Haruto assumed that the church advocated for the equality of different races. The first in his country to recognize Leon as a hero was the church. Then he thought that there were some voices heard in the church rooms. Using scanning magic, the guy saw several church workers who were on different floors. He was interested in the 3 underground floors. He was curious about what was there. Haruto scratched his head and said that there was nothing clear inside, but he wanted to figure it out later. He wouldn't notice the silhouette that was eavesdropping on him. After a while, he followed the maid down the corridor, who informed him that Princess Rufina had called him to her, and when they were alone in the room, the princess said that she wanted to tell the guy something, and no one but them should hear it. The guy blushed in his mind, thinking that his heart couldn't handle this. But they sat opposite each other. Then the princess looked away, saying that she wanted to talk about Leon, which the guy was not very happy about. Rufina said that they had been together for a month now, so she wanted to know if he had made any progress. The boy was a little disappointed with what Rufina wanted to talk about, but he still told the girl that Leon was a good guy who diligently listened to his instructions, noting that he would soon become quite strong. Then the princess informed the boy that she knew that Haruto had been watching the church for a month. The boy froze, thinking that the girl could be joking. The girl then said that it was impolite of her, but she still checked the guy's background. The princess looked at the documents in her hands carefully, and then told Haruto that when he registered with the Torres Guild, he stated that he was born in Mild Village. The girl then added that there was never a person there who matched the description of the boy. The guy nervously thought that he had been found out. He began to think of an excuse, and what should he do now? He thought that he should run away as quickly as possible. But Rufina said that everything was fine, and she wasn't going to tell anyone what she found out about Haruto. The boy continued to look at the girl, who replied that she had a personal request. She looked at Haruto seriously, asking what he could tell her about Leon and the church, since that was what she wanted to talk about. Haruto was a little surprised by the topic of conversation, and then said that the church simply recognized Leon as the hero of the sacred sword, checking with the princess whether this was so, and Rufina answered in the affirmative, saying that it was difficult to doubt it. The girl turned to the boy, saying what was bothering her. After all, like Haruto, before the church recognized Leon as a hero, no one had ever heard of him. Haruto was surprised, because Leon was definitely not a person summoned from another world. He thought about how, during this month, while Haruto had been in contact with Leon, there had been no indication that he had been summoned from the earth. Then, the princess added that there was no information about the sacred sword that Leon had either. The girl said that they had ruled Milis for many generations, but until Leon came, neither she nor her father knew about the sacred sword. Rufina said that she had read the chronicles, but there was no mention of the sword anywhere. And then she added that even though Leon was a hero with a sacred sword, she couldn't understand. She couldn't understand why Leon was so easily given into the custody of the royal family. Then, the boy asked if the royal family taking custody of the hero could lead to a deterioration in relations with the church. Then the girl, after thinking, answered that such a thing could not happen. In their kingdom, there was a good relationship between the church and the government. She added that even though the relationship was good, Rufina could not understand how the church would reject a hero with a sacred sword. The girl came closer to Haruto, who said that he understood her in general terms, but he still did not understand why she chose him. After all, he was a simple adventurer, especially since nothing was known about his past. The girl looked doubtfully at the guy, who understood that she could not trust him. The girl agreed with him, saying that she didn't trust him completely. Then she looked away, saying that she had decided to trust him after all. And then she said that from birth, she could vaguely read the thoughts of people around her. She pointed to her eyes, adding that she had a weak curse, so she couldn't clearly tell what Haruto was thinking. On top of all this, she needed to concentrate on the person she was talking to, and if there was someone else nearby, she wouldn't be able to do anything. He understood the girl, wondering if she was telling the truth, because her gaze directed at him was very strange. The girl then smiled, saying that she had told him everything she knew to gain the boy's trust, and now Haruto had to tell him everything he had learned about the church. The guy thought for a bit, thinking that he no longer trusted her, but he still told her what he had learned, since he couldn't really call it a secret. The girl thoughtfully began to consider the guy's story about the 3 underground floors. Then she asked Haruto to find out more about these floors. The guy was thinking about what he should do now, let it be just an addition to her main request. Then the princess apologized for not having said anything about the reward yet. The boy thought that he would definitely like to hear about it. After all, it was a request made by the princess herself. Therefore, the reward had to be quite large. The girl interrupted the guy's thoughts, offering her instead of a reward. Haruto then hesitated a little at what the princess had just said. The princess pointed at herself, saying that she was the reward. While the boy looked at the girl in surprise, she understood that Haruto was now doubting and did not trust her. She walked away from the adventurer, saying that she had already managed to study the guy, adding that she had been keeping an eye on Haruto for the entire month and saw that under his control, the hero Leon had become much stronger under his leadership. After a moment's hesitation, she added that the boy clearly had no connection to the church, and that was why she wanted to turn Haruto into her ally. She then remarked that it was quite convincing. After thinking for a while, he understood everything in general terms, but still, he did not understand why the girl offered herself as a reward. After all, a simple monetary reward would be enough for him. The girl smiled at the guy's words and then suggested postponing the conversation about the reward for later. Rufina walked up to the boy, placing her palms on Haruto's head, saying that she could give him something right now to boost his motivation. The girl came closer to his face. The guy thought that now she would kiss him. Haruto himself reached out to the girl. But suddenly, the princess pressed her lips to his forehead. The guy rubbed his forehead in surprise, surprised by such an action. Haruto returned home smiling contentedly and thinking that Rufina was a nice girl. Sharon went out to meet the guy, angry, asking where he had been. It was already time for school, and the guy was nowhere to be found. The guy quickly apologized to Sharon, saying that something had happened. The girl then assumed that the guy had gone to meet some cute girl, and when he didn't deny it, Sharon called the guy names. The guy lay contentedly in the hot water, thinking about how tired he was that day. He sank a little into the water, thinking about how Sharon and Laurier had chosen to ignore him. He thought about how he shouldn't have been so brazen in pestering them. The two girls went to spend the night at Aura's, and Haruto didn't understand when they managed to become such friends. Then he smiled, realizing that sometimes taking a bath alone wasn't so bad. A week had passed since the conversation with the princess, and Rufina began to often attend Leon's training, and although at first glance this was a normal phenomenon, Hirotu was a little worried. The guy didn't understand if she wanted to support him or if she didn't trust him, and that's why she was keeping an eye on him. The guy grabbed his head abruptly. He was already on the edge because of his thoughts, and then sighed and began to think about Leon. This guy didn't remember anything until he became a hero. Then he thought it was a memory loss. Thinking about it, Hirotu thought it was the effect of the summoning, but he couldn't see that the guy wasn't lying to him. When the boy asked Leon to let him touch the sacred sword, besides the sword itself, the magic contained within it was also amazing. For weapons and armor, it was very important what materials they were made of. After all, the rarer the materials used in forging the sword, the stronger the magic that could be embedded in it. Haruto understood that no one else, not even him, could use the magic of this sword. Leon had only learned the very basics of sword magic, so he couldn't penetrate Laurier's air shield. Then looking at the sword in his hand, he thought that the sword might have some kind of settings, assuming that Haruto's parameters did not match the definition of the owner's sword. He tried to extract magic, but nothing worked. Then Haruto realized that the sacred sword could become a terrible weapon, but only in the hands of Leon and no one else. The guy thought about how immediately after Leon was given the sacred sword in the church, he was introduced to the royal family. And while he was thinking that it was some kind of favor to the church, a girl quietly approached him and then called him. The girl sat down next to the guy, saying that she came to rub his back. The guy asked her, confused, what she was doing there, sailing away from her. To which the girl replied that she had learned that the guy was alone this time, and so she came to do her duties. The guy looked at Mina in confusion, not understanding what duties Mina was talking about, and it seemed to him that he did not understand something. Mina said that she was obliged to please the guests in every possible way, noting that at any time of the day, adding that if the master so desired. The guy didn't understand if this was normal, even though he was alone this time, but he didn't ask for such service. Hirotu thought that this was enough to drive him crazy. Then the thought occurred to him that this was one of Princess Rufina's honey traps. Then the girl Mina admitted to the guy that it was the first time she did something like that, so she apologized for everything. The guy froze, looking at the girl who was shaking very badly, and then he hugged her, causing the girl to smile, and then Hirotu thought that he no longer had the strength to hold back. While Mina was sleeping in bed, when Hirotu sat on the edge of the bed and sighed, He smiled, thinking that he was a former hero, but now he became a sage. He screamed in his mind, holding his head in his hands, wondering if he was not following Rafina's lead. He looked at Mina, thinking that the girl looked charming. She was too tempting, so he knew that he would have to take responsibility. Even just remembering yesterday made the guy's heart beat faster. Hiroto understood that he lacked wisdom to be a sage. He lay down next to the girl again, thinking that he was fine as is, and thinking about it would be unnecessary. The girl opened her eyes slightly and then called the guy. He stroked her ear, asking if she felt uncomfortable. She intertwined their fingers, saying that everything was fine, and then pointed to her lips. The guy hovered over the girl and then touched his lips to the girl's lips. After the night, the day came. Suddenly, Sharon's scream was heard as she entered the bedroom. The boy sleepily rose from the bed when the girl shouted that Haruto slept with Mina. Sharon walked up to Mina, who pulled the blanket over herself, and then the girl asked if Mina was okay. She also said that the guy was a real villain. She then asked if Haruto had made her do it, asking if she would be okay. The guy was sleepily rubbing the back of his head, thinking about what had made him sleepy, realizing that he'd overdone it the second time. Blushing deeply from embarrassment, Mina said, Haruto knew that she was inexperienced. The guy did not act like a servant with the girl and was so gentle. Laurier turned to Haruto, congratulating him on finally getting Mina too. Now, in addition to Sharon, there was another beautiful flower that had fallen into his hands. Sharon got angry at her friend, saying that Mina was not a flower that needed to be picked, and then asked her to stop talking nonsense. Laurier then walked up to Haruto, who just smiled and told Sharon that the boy was perfectly aware of what he was doing. The girl then told the guy that Sharon was worried that, besides her, Haruto might be more attracted to him than the girl. Then she, putting the puka under the blanket, asked him to prove to the guy that he was a real man. Sharon asked her friend to wait. But then Mina joined Laurier, saying that she would also help. Laurier noted that the day had only just begun and they still had plenty of time. The guy smirked. He was a former hero, but he was still a man. The girls pushed the guy onto the bed while the guy wondered if he could back down now. He thought that it was time to prove to himself and the girls that he could overcome his limit of endurance. Haruto thought that he had to give it his all in this fight. Sometime later, Haruto stood in front of the princess, awkwardly scratching the back of his head, saying that he had not yet decided whether or not to take part in the attack on the demon fort. Rafina smiled, noting that this attack was simply the perfect opportunity, since the award ceremony, if successful, would take place right in the church. She also added that they were very lucky to have such a chance, and in a month. The guy wondered if there was another way. He thoughtfully lowered his head, thinking that in the end he would have to work very hard. He knew it was only natural that the hero's award ceremony would take place in the church, so he could officially enter there. But he did not want to attack the fort. Understanding his thoughts, the princess added that the main force would be Leon and his group. In addition, there should be a way to infiltrate the fort and defeat the demon lord. The princess said that Haruto would only be a distraction. At that time, the guy was only thinking about the fact that he hadn't even agreed to participate in this yet. Then the princess took the guy by the hand and began to look at the guy, begging him to agree. The boy tried to ignore that look, begging for help. Haruto wondered how Rafina could have known the easiest way to persuade him. He suggested that Mina might have been involved in all of this. Then, thinking again, he realized that he couldn't refuse after all. Then he said that he understood everything, saying that he agreed. Hearing the guy's answer, the girl was happy. She hugged him happily and then thanked him. The guy was embarrassed that she pressed herself too close to him. He thought about how the girl's form was much bigger than he thought. Then he stopped his thoughts, thinking that it was another honey trap, but the guy wouldn't say he resisted it that much. And in that case, he hugged the girl tightly, squeezing her dress just below the waist, causing the girl to scream. He did his best to enjoy this moment as much as he could. The girl blushed, and after a moment of awkward silence, she asked if Haruto had decided what he wanted as a reward. He knew what he wanted as a reward, so he asked to be allowed to take Mina with him. The princess looked at the boy in surprise. Mina's parents died about 4 years ago, and since then she was bought as a maid for the royal palace. Her mother was also a maid in the castle. It was only thanks to old connections that Mina was placed as a maid and not sold into service. The girl happily agreed to leave the castle with the guy after he asked her about it. He thought that making her his property sounded terribly immoral. And now, looking at the sad princess, he was a little confused. But then the girl smiled, saying that she did not agree with the guy. He was a little shocked, And then Rafina said that Mina would go with him only if he took the princess with him. Then, after a pause, the girl said that she was getting married soon. The guy was surprised. He didn't expect this, but now something became clear to him. The princess said that she would soon be 16 years old. Because she was the third princess, she would be married to a nobleman's son. Before, she took it for granted that even if she had no chance of the throne, she was still a princess. But then she learned that during the meeting of the nobles with the hero, the partner whose partner was chosen for the girl looked like an ugly toad. The boy took a deep breath. He had never heard the princess swear before. At this time, the girl was screaming that she didn't want it. Hirotu said that he understood the princess's situation, but even if he wanted to, he couldn't stand up to an entire country. The girl nodded, saying that she understood the guy, and then she smiled, because that was why she told her father what she had managed to find out about Leon in the church. The boy listened nervously as the girl said that the girl's father had handed over the investigation to her. The girl also said that her father had promised that she could get anything as a reward. The boy thought it was all absurd. And why would the girl marry him when the princess could break off the engagement as a reward? Rafina said that it was impossible because the nobility would not accept such a choice. Then the girl approached the guy, because she was sure that Haruto, who was stronger than even the hero himself, asked for her hand as a reward, then her father would agree. Haruto was wondering if he could get the king's support and get the princess at the same time, and that didn't sound too bad for the guy. Then the girl added that she would not have offered such a thing to a person she did not like. After all, if it was Haruto, then she would agree. The guy's eyes widened. And then he slowly said that he understood the girl. He smiled, saying that as a reward he would take both Mina and Rafina with him. After all, he was forced to take responsibility. The girl looked at the guy happily, and then, smiling, hugged him. Haruto was not completely sure that the princess was completely frank with him. He understood that perhaps the guy would regret this decision, but he had no way back. He kissed the girl, thinking that he had taken a little more prepayment. It was time to formulate a plan. The soldier said that the demon had invaded from the vast forest south of the fort. The reason for the attack was still unknown, and the fort was quite a stronghold for trade within the country. Everyone listened attentively to the speaker, who reported that the fort was very close to the capital, and now it was a key point for transportation to the south. Leon said that after the attack, troops were sent out, and it turned out that the leader of the monsters who occupied the fort was a demon. At this time, while the hero was saying that the troops were defeated, Laurier was quietly snoring. Haruto looked at the girl with displeasure, asking if she knew about the demon. The girl looked at the guy. Yawning, Laurier asked what he was talking about, which made the guy angry. Haruto asked again about the demon that had taken over the fort south of the capital, that came from the forest where the girl had lived for a long time. But the girl again said that she knew nothing. The guy just sighed hopelessly, realizing that, as always, it was useless to ask Laurier about anything. Then Leon turned to the thoughtful Haruto and told him that he didn't have to worry. After all, they could definitely deal with the demon, to which Haruto thought that, in principle, handsome guys are supposed to behave like that. Although Leon had a reason to act self-confident, Haruto knew that he had to believe in the hero, because it was his duty to train the boy so that Leon could fulfill his duty. The boy was distracted from his thoughts by a knight, reminding him that Haruto had to distract the demon's retinue by pretending to attack the fort from the main entrance alone. Haruto was a little surprised that they were supposed to attack alone. Then the knight nodded that it would be so. Then he added that the princess had said so, and Haruto had suggested this plan to her. The guy just lay down on the table, resigned, wondering what the princess had done. A few days later, Haruto had a date with Sharon. They walked together through the market and the park. Haruto thought about how he was a gentleman after all. What was surprising to him was that he didn't have any dirty thoughts. He then suggested that it was because of his active nights every day. And now, sitting on a bench by the river and holding Sharon's hand, he just wanted to sit with the girl, just holding hands. After thinking for a while, the guy noticed that Sharon had always been an energetic girl. Even as a child, she would fight with the hooligans from the neighboring villages. Haruto noticed that before meeting him, she was quite feisty. He knew that her grandmother had taught Sharon to always be honest and not to lose heart. And with these words, the girl grew up. But earlier this year, her grandmother left this mortal world. After her grandmother's funeral, Sharon decided to become an adventurer to fulfill her dream of seeing the world. The girl told the guy that if it weren't for him, she would most likely have remained a low-ranking adventurer of Torres. Sharon smiled sweetly at the boy, making him think he needed to hold on. After all, he was a gentleman, and he had to be patient. Then the girl asked the guy with interest where he came from, how he became so strong, and how his parents were doing. When asked about his parents, the boy replied that he grew up in an orphanage and therefore did not know who his parents were. The girl apologized, since she shouldn't have asked, to which Haruto only smiled, saying that she had nothing to apologize for. He grew up in an orphanage, but the teacher was very kind. And on top of that, the guy had very friendly relations with the other children. The guy took the girl's hand again, telling her that she had nothing to worry about. The girl just smiled, looking at the guy. Haruto told about his journey to Andalusia, but did not specify that he was summoned from another world and that he was a hero. Even though he chose his words as if he was telling a story about a journey through the continents of this world, it was obvious that Sharon was listening attentively and did not ask him to repeat anything. The guy thought that it was the first time he had talked so much about his past. Then he said that he had a small souvenir for her that he'd almost forgotten about. He opened the box, which contained a pendant. The guy took it in his hands and then fastened the decoration around the neck of the girl, who thanked him. Sharon smiled at the boy, saying that she was so happy, and then realized that she hadn't prepared any gift in return for Haruto. At these words, the guy thought that he had a cunning plan for a return gift. He leaned towards the girl and then kissed her. Then he pulled away, saying that this was the return gift that he wanted to receive most from the girl. Then the guy led the girl towards the bushes, but Sharon didn't understand why. Haruto was just thinking about whether there was a rule where a gentleman should remain a gentleman after sunset. A week after leaving the capital, Haruto and his companions were sitting in the bushes, looking at the very fort that the monsters had occupied. The guy thought about the fact that Laurier, although she lived in approximately those places, had never been near the fort. The guy also assumed that the girl simply could not remember, because anything could come from her. He looked to the side, and as Haruto expected, there was a hidden passage. Everyone watched as one of the soldiers cleared this passage. Leon said that they would go through a hidden passage and then asked Haruto to take care of himself. The boy was trembling with anticipation. Coming out of the forest, they approached the fort along the main road. This would clearly attract the demon's attention. Their task was to lure out as many monsters as possible from the fort, who were the demon's henchmen. And Leon's group, passing through a hidden passage, would deal with the demon. Haruto told Leon that his opponent was a demon, but they could handle it. The boy told Leon to show what they had achieved in 3 months of training. Then they bumped fists, after which the hero headed with his group to the hidden passage. Haruto smiled contentedly, thinking that this moment with the fists looked pretty cool. Before, Haruto would be sent into battle by a big, muscular old man patting him on the head like he was a fool. It made him feel something like friendship, but this moment was definitely cool. The boy then turned to Sharon and Laurier, checking one last time. He said he would stand in the vanguard and use magic on the fort to lure the monsters out. At this time, Laurier was supposed to cover them with magic and stay behind, and Sharon was supposed to destroy the demons that would break through Haruto. Haruto then said that if anyone was injured, they should go to Dweis, who was the court magician, for treatment. Then the guy said that they could go now, and the girls happily agreed, and so they ran towards the fort. As they were getting close to the fort, Haruto stopped, thinking that this place might be suitable for them. Then he concentrated, flames and a loud explosion appeared from Haruto's palms. He created the explosion, giving it an appearance, and then the guy launched a fireball towards the fort. The shell exploded directly over the fort, which only made Hiroto smile. After all, immediately after the explosion, monsters began to attack them. The guy raised his sword and then attacked several goblins, disarming them. But then he was attacked by a wolf, who wanted to bite him, but the guy defeated him too. There was already a huge monster standing behind Haruto, who swung with all his might at the guy, who managed to dodge, disarming him as well. A group of goblins surrounded the boy, preparing to attack him. But Haruto used earthen bonds that bound the monsters, disarming them. One of the goblins managed to escape from the bonds, but Haruto immediately beheaded him. At this time, the girls also fought hard against the monsters. Haruto wiped the sweat from his chin, thinking that the smell of blood was incredibly strong. He looked at the approaching monsters, wondering if he had already dealt with more than a third of the monsters. The boy noticed a shadow looming over him, and then he saw a huge dark silhouette towering over the fort. Haruto shouted to Laurier that the demon was approaching them, And when the demons started using magic towards them, Laurier stood in front of Haruto and Sharon, telling them to leave it to her. She smiled and said that the shield would protect them, and then the girl used an air barrier that saved them from the demons' projectiles. Haruto praised Laurier and then told Sharon to fight as before, because soon Leon would reach the fort and then attack the demon, who screamed loudly. The demon jumped down from the fort, standing in front of the adventurers. The demon screamed again. Haruto listened to the scream, hearing a familiar name, and then asked Laurier because her name was Steinhardt. The girl nodded in agreement. That was her name. And the demon screamed her name again. Laurier looked at the monster thoughtfully, then asked who he was. The demon became angry because she forgot him, calling the girl strange names. Laurier paused, saying that she didn't remember any gold pants. The monster growled angrily, saying that he had been looking for her for revenge until now. Then he said, about a year ago, Laurier came to his castle. Then he sat quietly in the castle and drank tea, enjoying the weather and the atmosphere. But after the girl destroyed everything there, turning his possessions into ruins, the demon asked if she really didn't remember that. The girl couldn't remember it and wasn't sure about it. Haruto nervously remembered that Laurier, at the briefing when he asked her about the fort, said that she didn't understand what he was talking about. The demon swore at Laurier's words, saying that it didn't matter whether she remembered or not. He pointed his finger at the girl, saying that he would defeat her now. Then he pointed at himself, saying that after that he would mock and torture her until she died. Laurier laughed at the fact that the demon wanted to defeat her, after which the girl said that she had belonged to Haruto for a long time, and therefore, if he wanted to get to Laurier, the demon would first have to defeat her master. Hearing the girl's words, the guy thought about what Laurier was doing. He looked at the villain. Wasn't the demon on Leon's group? And now the demon came here. The guy didn't understand why everything turned out this way when he stood in front of the monster. The demon turned to Haruto, saying that a duel was required with him. But first, the demon had to introduce himself according to all the rules. The demon introduced himself by saying that his name was Gulband, Coop, and then he said that their bet would be Laurier von Steinhardt, and so he challenged Haruto to a duel. The guy wondered if he should do the same. It was all so confusing, but he had no choice. Then he raised his sword and, saying his name, accepted the challenge. The demon began to attack the guy, who also did not stand still. The guy was surprised when something flashed near his feet. He stumbled as he saw the flames that burned everything in their path. It was an all-consuming flame. The demon swung and then began to strike at the guy, who deftly dodged them, and then Haruto jumped away from him. He looked at Galband, thinking that even though the demon had missed, the guy had been doused with that heat of fire. The demon had noticed that the guy was quick. The guy thought about it, he couldn't dodge all the time, and then he used the earthen wall. Haruko knew that earth binding was useless in this case, and even if he couldn't kill the demon with one blow, he could definitely cut off his arm. And when the demon emerged from underground, Haruto ran towards the monster. He tried to cut off his hand with all his might, but nothing happened, and the demon fell to the ground. Then the guy, continuing to dodge the enemy's blows, thought that he needed to fill the sword with magic. And when he filled it, the demon attacked the guy again, but he dodged and then swung at the enemy. He struck the demon's hand with his sword with all his might, but Haruto could only leave a scratch on his body. Galband then set his hand on fire, saying that the boy was caught. Haruto's sword was also in flames, causing the boy to let go. The demon laughed, asking what had happened. Then he added that the boy had been disarmed, and now he had to do something. Haruto shook his sore arm, thinking that he had put all his magic into it, but in the end it was just an iron sword. The demon shouted that he was being kind now, and so if the boy gave in now, Galband would finish him off painlessly. But if Haruto decides to resist further, the demon will break his arms and legs, after which, in front of his eyes, he will torture Laurier, and in conclusion, he will tear off his head. The guy frowned. This demon really annoyed him, so he began to think. Haruto had almost no offensive magic. And even without a weapon, fighting him, who used fire fists, was, to put it mildly, stupid. And when the demon asked if the guy really wanted to continue resisting, Haruto just remained silent. The boy clenched his fists. He had no choice but to use his trump card. He grabbed his head in panic, not believing what he was about to do now. Then he turned to his companions, who were looking at him. He smiled, sighing, realizing that he seemed to have made the girls worry. The guy put his hands out to the sides, mentally apologizing to the girls, and then began to say the spell. His magical power, hidden in his soul, was supposed to gather and ignite. It was supposed to come out and become his sword that would drive out the demon. Being summoned as a hero in Andalusia, a huge amount of magical energy appeared in his body. And then, with this magic, he could create his most powerful weapon. A bright light appeared, blinding the girls. The guy knew that it was extremely difficult to control this magic, so even Haruto had to cast a long spell. The guy was sure that at that moment he looked very stupid, and that was another reason why he didn't like to resort to this magic. And the demon who looked at it only smiled. Haruto remembered how ashamed he was, and sealed this magic for emergencies. He remembered how he came up with this spell when he was 12 years old, and so he clenched his fist, saying, "A sword that cuts through the heavens and splits the earth, capable of destroying anything, is about to appear." He stretched his hands forward, and then the divine sword of destruction, Ragnarok, was in his clenched hands. The girls watched this with admiration, and then Haruto looked at the demon seriously, saying that he forced the guy to resort to this magic, and now he will pay for it. Galban got angry and then attacked the guy, asking what it was. But Haruto only swung his sword harder, hitting the enemy's fiery hand. The demon was left without one limb, quite surprised by this turn of events. Haruto didn't hesitate and struck the demon again, from which the demon was defeated and scattered to the wind. The girls called the guy, and then Laurier threw herself at the guy with hugs. The guy warned her that it was too dangerous, but the girl did not hear him, and they fell to the ground. Laurier asked if the boy was okay, to which he wearily replied that he had simply used too much magic. And then he added that because the girl was at stake, he had to overdo it a little. Laurier, blushing, looked at the guy, and then hid her face in embarrassment. Sharon crouched down in front of the guy, asking him about the magic sword, admiring it, to which the guy said that it was his trump card for emergencies. While the girl admired him, the guy, blushing, looked at the girl's yucca, then sighing, he slowly sat down. Then he asked Sharon to call the soldiers from the forest and tell them that the demon was finished, and the girl ran off to fulfill the guy's request. Then he turned to Laurier, who continued to cling to him. She raised her head and then thanked Haruto for everything. The boy smiled and blushed, saying that he couldn't let his Laurier go to that demon. He said that everything was fine now, so the girl could go and help Leon. The girl clenched her fists resolutely, asking the guy to let her do it. But before leaving, she leaned towards the guy again and kissed him. She then warned the boy that she was going to help the others, leaving Haruto blushing as he watched her go. Soon, Laurier and Leon with their comrades cleared the fort of monsters. Haruto left the finishing off of the remaining monsters around the fort to the soldiers. He himself was resting in one of the village houses, thinking that the transfer from the earth had not exhausted him so much. Laurier entered the house. The guy looked at her, asking if something had happened. She smiled, holding a teapot and a cup. Haruto was sure that Laurier should have been with Sharon now, to which Laurier replied that since the guy was injured while protecting her, she should have looked after him. The girl then asked if there was anything she could do for the guy. Then she suggested using her lap as a pillow. The boy just sighed, saying he was so tired he couldn't move, so he wanted Laurier to serve him. The girl looked at the guy with displeasure, saying that despite being tired, he continued to want this, and then she closed the door with the latch. She sighed, thinking that she had no choice. Laurier pulled off her shorts, and then she crawled under the covers with the guy. She said that she always counts on him, so he rightfully deserved this award. The guy just sighed contentedly, thinking that it was worth his efforts. At this time in the capital of militias, in the Church of Harmony on the 3rd floor of the basement, the magic ball lit up, and a voice came from it. The voice didn't understand why Haruto was here. Laurier stretched sleepily and yawned, waking up. But when she noticed the collar around her neck with the chain attached, she asked in panic what was going on. Haruto stood over her. He said that he was glad that the girl finally woke up, and then said that it was a punishment for the girl. The girl did not understand why they wanted to punish her. Then the guy said that because of her he had to fight the demon, but the girl asked him to stop, reminding him that she had already served him as an apology. The guy started to punish her, saying that these were different things. And anyway, it was time for punishment, and so the girl had to call the guy master. The girl screamed, not understanding what the guy was doing at all. And when the guy hit her again, she called him sir. The boy blushed quite a bit, holding his heart, thinking that it was an amazing sight. The girl was a little surprised, and then Haruto said to try calling him Oni-chan. Several days had passed since they had returned to the capital, and in about a month, the award ceremony was supposed to take place in the church, and until then, the guy had nothing special to do. On the day Haruto asked Sharon out on a date, he bought gifts for the other girls as well, but he was never able to give Mina a gift. He entered the room where Mina was cleaning at the time. He called the girl, but she was busy cleaning, so the guy could only watch the girl's magnificent view. The next time he went to Mina was when night fell. He looked at the sleeping girls and then left the bedroom. Haruto walked up to Mina's room, who opened the door for him, surprised to see a guy. She asked excitedly if something had happened, to which the guy hesitated a little. Mina noticed that Haruto had been following the girl all day. The guy was a little surprised that she noticed him. The girl then suggested that she might have done something wrong, but the guy quickly denied it. Then he took out a box, saying that he wanted to give her something. The girl looked at her gift with admiration. She blushed shyly and smiled, and then thanked the guy, saying that she was very happy. Then the guy suddenly hugged the girl, which she was not ready for, and then called the guy. The next day came, and the boy was thinking about the new year coming next week. And remembering this, the boy asked Mina to sew clothes. Haruto hugged the girl's legs, who said she understood him. She then asked what the clothes were supposed to be. And when the new year came, one of the girls asked what the clothes were for. Then the guy said with inspiration that it was for romance. Laurier only said that the clothes were useless, but the guy thought it was amazing. Then they went into the house. Sharon said it was fresh and pleasant. Mina said that for the first time the rays of the morning sun lifted her spirits quite well. Laurier wondered why they had to drag themselves so far. Now the guy was thinking about how they would go back to their room and have fun, because he hadn't done that last night. When they entered the room, Rufina was already waiting for them and said that the clothes were interesting. The boy was a little surprised by the princess's arrival. The princess said that she was curious about what Mina was so busy doing, and after asking her, Rufina learned that Haruto had come up with something interesting. The girl then hugged the guy, then moved closer to his ear, saying that she had spoken to her father about his reward. The girl smiled, taking off her clothes, saying that he could have it right then and there. Naren was a little confused because there were other girls, but Rufina said that she had already talked to his 3 companions about it. They looked at the 3 silent girls. Mina then said that since it was Her Highness's first time, she could provide any assistance she could. Laurier said that they had already seen the dawn, so it was stupid to just go to sleep. Haruto tilted his head back, thinking that this was very similar to Rufina. And now, standing in front of the girls, he had no willpower left to resist. He looked at the 4 girls lying on the bed, thinking that they could fully enjoy Rufina's honey trap. He hovered over the princess, thinking that he should have allowed the priestess's clothes to reveal her body, but he should not have taken them off. And then the boy kissed the princess. The guy couldn't lose to the girls. Having 4 girls at the same time was a horror for the guy. It was impossible without the experience of countless fights. Standing by the window, the boy thought that his former experience as a hero, which was the result of 3 years of fierce battle, came in handy. And while he was busy with his thoughts, girls came up to him from behind and then pounced on him. Only these girls took all his strength. Rufina was too timid at first, but what was surprising for the guy, the girl quickly became extremely active for the first time, which made Haruto have a hard time perceiving his surroundings. It seemed to him that he was drowning in these girls, but now, lying there, hugging them, he thought that he had conquered them. Haruto continued to breathe heavily while Rufina looked at him with a smile. The girl then told the guy that it was better than she imagined. Then she asked the boy to decide the matter about her and Mina when he met her father. The boy was already thinking about meeting His Majesty, so he sleepily agreed with the girl. And then he thought that the new year had not been wasted. A week later, the Harmony Church held a celebration to celebrate the capture of the fort. And there the boy met Rufina again. They approached the iron-barred doors when the girl said that the church's security was now weakened. Haruto and the princess began to descend to the underground floors when the boy said that he was really looking forward to this day. The princess noticed that the boy looked worried and then asked him if he knew what was in front of them. The guy looked at the sphere thoughtfully, saying that, unfortunately, he didn't know. He knew for sure that he was interested in this sphere, but he didn't know the reason. The girl said that she found out what this underground room was used for. She said that it was to hear the words of the divine oracle. The guy turned to the girl to clarify. But the princess pointed to the ball, saying that it was glowing. Haruto saw it, but nothing bad happened. Then he said that it was time for them to go. Then the princess said that they could retreat a little now, and the guy agreed with her. And when Rafina's fading voice reminded the boy to prepare for an audience with her father, the sphere lit up again. She watched as the boy told the girl that it would be quite hard, realizing that this was the hero. And so the day of the audience with His Majesty came. The boy asked the king for forgiveness for distracting him by standing on one knee in the hall. The king greeted the boy and asked him to relax. The guy obeyed the man, thinking that his stomach was slightly twisting in pain. Then the man started talking about what he had heard, that the boy wanted to discuss with him the reward for returning the fort and the investigation into the church, and the boy nervously agreed to this. The boy then said that he would like to take Mina and Her Highness, the third princess, Rafina, as a reward. The guy smiled while many looked in surprise at Mina, who smiled shyly at the guy's words. The king looked at his daughter thoughtfully, saying that he had already heard a similar wish from his daughter. Then the man noted that Rafina trusted the guy very much, and the king would not mind making an alliance with such a strong man as Haruto. But then the king said, although he was not against it, it also concerned the honor of the Marquis Cordato. The boy did not understand who this Marquis was. Suddenly, Rafina objected to her father, saying that there was not even an official verbal promise with the Marquis. The boy looked at her in confusion as she said that the Marquis could not be affected by this matter, nor could his honor. But the king said that he had told him about it personally. In response to her father's words, the girl only approached the guy and, hugging him by the hand, said that it was already too late because she had already given her body and it was Haruto's first time to her. It was clear that the boy would be scared of the girl's father's reaction to her words. Haruto nervously asked what she was even saying, thinking that he would undoubtedly be executed. The girl only smiled, saying that it was true. The king only sighed, noting that his daughter had gone too far. He sighed and agreed with the couple, saying that he would give his approval. The girl looked happily at her father, whispering that they had succeeded. But then the king continued. Rising from his throne, he said that he approved unofficially for now, since the issue with the Marquis had to be resolved first. Afterwards, the girl's father pointed at Haruto, saying that he had decided that the boy would head to the Marquis's domain and settle everything with him. And so the boy walked toward his home, and behind him walked the princess, who said that her father should have followed tradition. And then she noted that he showed flexibility in his own way. But the guy turned to her abruptly and, pulling her cheeks, said that he was not asking about that. The girl asked the guy to stop pulling her cheeks. And when he let her go, the princess said that her father would take this into account and put an end to everything. She closed her eyes sadly. Haruto walked up to the girl, thinking that what was going to happen was going to happen. He quickly picked the girl up, thinking that Rafina deserved to be punished. And while the girl blushed and looked at the guy understood that she was thinking that he was going to carry her to the bed. Then he entered the house, realizing that the girl did not suspect what would happen next because she was too naive. Mina was already waiting for them in the house. She asked if she could help with anything, to which Haruto said that he was really counting on the girl, and the maid understood him. Haruto brought the princess to an unfamiliar room, where the girl turned her head with interest, looking around the room. Mina then accepted the collar and chain from the boy with a smile, after which she fastened these items around Rafina's neck, who screamed that she was a princess. Mina began to undress the princess, who said it was humiliating. Haruto thought that the girl was too excited. The guy smiled, saying that now she was his property, and Rafina was now obliged to serve him well. The girl just covered herself with her hands, and then said that even if he got her body, he would not be able to take her heart. The boy and Mina just smiled, realizing that the princess was supporting their game, and then the maid handed the boy the ropes. The guy tied up the girl, thinking that he needed to teach this girl a lesson. The guy thought that the girl had already given up. And when Sharon and Laurier came to them, Rafina screamed that she was a princess and she could not lose. Then Laurier asked Mina what Haruto and the princess were doing. And in general, the girls also took part in the game, and thus another happy day of the year passed. Now the boy was admiringly examining the object in front of him. Haruto spread his arms out to the sides, expressing his shock. And, while the guy was rejoicing, Rafina said that it was a carriage controlled by magic, which the royal palace had prepared. Sharon knew the carriage was amazing, but she hadn't expected Haruto to be so excited about it. Laurier had said it was just a travel box, and she didn't understand why Haruto was so excited. Haruto just chuckled because it was obvious that women and children were not able to appreciate the charm of the magical car. Mina informed the guy that food and clothes were loaded, to which Haruto ruffled the girl's hair, thanking her, and then thought it was cute when she purred, wagging her tail. And while he was stroking the girl, Leon called him, who said that even though it was just a routine inspection of the territory, he asked the guy to take care of himself. Haruto understood that this was how they had explained the purpose of his trip, so he thought that everyone should know his true goal. The guy thanked the hero, promising to be careful. He was sure that nothing bad would happen on the way. At this time, the fairy flew up to the guy's ear, asking him to take care of Cleito. The guy was a little confused. Then they all got on the carriage as the soldiers saw them off. Haruto made sure everything was okay and then said that they were going to leave, calling the carriage the Shooting Star. Sharon and Laurier said it was too long. Rafina said it wasn't a bad name at all. Mina thought if the guy wanted to name the crew that way, then so be it. Haruto just wanted her to stop talking already. But suddenly a voice came, apologizing for not introducing himself immediately, and then saying that he was a magical spirit stone installed in this self-propelled carriage, and his name was Cleito. Then the boy realized who the fairy was talking about, thinking that Rafina and Mina were aware of all this. He looked at the soldiers and then told Cleito to get the carriage moving. The journey to Marquis could take about a week, and since they were in no particular hurry, they decided to devote 3 hours a day to training. They decided that Sharon would teach Rafina how to move properly in combat and body-strengthening magic. Haruto had Laurier's training. The girl never held back in sparring, and the battle for the guy turned into a fight not for life, but for death. Therefore, the guy thought that the next girl he wanted in his harem should be good at healing magic. And then Mina would call them to have lunch together after training. Although the guy hadn't managed to do that in the mansion, now Mina was sitting at the same table with them. The boy thought about how the food tasted even better when he ate in company. Then he thought about how he was sitting surrounded by his wives, which made him very happy. But then night would come and they would set off again. Rafina and Sharon sharing a bed with the boy, Mina driving the cart with Laurier sleeping behind her. And so they arrived in the lands of Cordato, in the local city of Iris. And while they were driving through the city, Rafina told them that there was a school for aristocrats there. Then she said that she did not go to this school, and as a representative of the royal family, the girl had private teachers. Haruto had already started to imagine the princess in a school uniform, as well as in sports clothes. Rafina distracted the boy from his thoughts, forcing him to look away. Where were the two students? The guy asked if the robe was part of the uniform, to which the princess said that this robe was the schoolchildren's uniform, under which they wore their everyday clothes. Arriving at the Marquis's house, the local butler greeted the guests, asking them to wait for them in the living room. They sat at the table, drinking tea, and the guy thought that, as expected from a princess, there was no rudeness from her, and she was the very essence of elegance. The Viscount entered the room with a noise, addressing Princess Rafina, causing Haruto to choke on his tea. He said he was deeply flattered that she had come all the way. The guy looked at the man who entered, realizing that it was that same pig Toad. Rafina said that she and the Viscount had not seen each other for a long time, to which the Viscount said that she was addressing him too formally. The Viscount suggested that the girl call him Deal, to which Haruto thought that this guy was too self-confident. Haruto saw that Deal already felt like her future husband, which the hero was very unhappy about. The guy was confused. Since this guy was a Viscount, then where was the Marquis? He didn't understand what the hell was going on. Then Haruto turned to the Viscount, who asked with displeasure who the guy was. Then he said that if he was an escort, he had no right to interfere in his conversation with the princess. To which Haruto said that Her Majesty the Princess had come to talk to the Marquis, so he asked if they could see him. Then the Viscount thought, saying that his father was not there at the moment. As the boy thought, the Marquis was the Viscount's father, and then he became confused when he realized that the Marquis was absent, but did not know why. Haruto dealt with the monsters that began to attack the boy, and after hitting them with his sword, they turned into flames. The man approached the boy and said that the monsters from the dungeon did not die. Then Haruto assumed that they turned into essence, after which they were reborn. He pressed his hand against the wall, realizing that search was useless there, so he needed to use more magical energy. He looked at the map, saying that the Marquis was much lower than they thought, thinking about how easily Rafina had convinced him to help. There was a large labyrinth under the school of this city. Its exact depth was still unknown. There were also those who went down to the 50th floor. And soon, the school was going to have its final exam, which consisted of the graduates having to go down into the labyrinth for a month. And this year, there was one outstanding student. Simply put, he was a genius, and not even from the nobility. The Marquis, wanting to see the genius with his own eyes, became one of the members of the examination committee. And now only about 2 weeks have passed since he descended into the dungeon. And the boy didn't want to wait another 2 weeks to talk to the Marquis about his marriage to Rafina. Then he thought that there was nothing to be done, and he could wait those 2 weeks. But Rafina said that this could be a chance. Then the guy did not understand what she was talking about. Then the princess told the boy to contact the Marquis, the person's abilities first and foremost. She assumed that it would be easier to convince him this way. And then she hugged the guy tightly, saying that she was sure that Haruto would be able to catch up with the graduates and thus prove his skill. Then Haruto thought that it would be nice to catch up with them without being easy. He hugged the girl tightly, thinking that he would then have to move out right now and put in all his strength. But then he dismissed these thoughts, saying that it was better to wait until the Marquis returned. And then he pushed the girls onto the bed. The guy understood that the girl thought that if she pressed him to her chest, she would get what she wanted, but she was too expected. And when he moved away from the girl, she turned to him so offended, saying that he was bad. After which, the rest of the girls watched as the guy slapped Rafina, telling her not to be offended by the refusal. And when it was deep night and everyone was asleep, Haruto had a strange feeling that woke him up. He didn't understand what it was. He felt the same feeling from the sphere in the church, which was now from the dungeon. And that's how it was. In the end, Haruto decided to go explore the underground labyrinth because of this feeling, which made Rafina very happy. For 12 hours now, he had been exploring the dungeon, noting that he had advanced further than he had expected. He took out his cell phone, looking at the time, thinking that he would calculate the route to the 20th floor. Haruto yawned and then went to bed, thinking that he would be able to catch up with them the next day in the morning. After that, he fell asleep. The next morning, he walked further, going further down. He was surprised to see 2 monsters fighting each other in front of him. He thought they were supposed to be on the same side, but it seemed to him that one of the monsters was mechanical. Then the guy killed the slug, which died immediately after one blow with the sword. But suddenly, the mechanical villain also began to attack Haruto. The guy was able to hit him, not understanding what just happened. He looked back at the robot, surprised that it didn't disappear after it was defeated. But without giving it much importance, the guy moved forward, because now he did not have time to think about it. He continued walking, examining the walls along the way. And when he reached the 17th floor, he suddenly heard a voice telling the others to quickly return to the surface. Haruto saw a group of students in front of him, saying that they should have stayed where they were. Someone said that they should have helped the people downstairs. Haruto quietly walked up to them and greeted them, causing the students to scream in fear. They looked at Haruto in surprise, not understanding what he was doing in this place. His school clothes still played a role, and no one rushed in with cries of panic, so Haruto told a lie he had made up in advance, and then he asked in detail about what had happened to them. Then the students said that they had reached the 20th floor without any problems, after which the students were usually given free rein, and they decided to start searching the floor for secret doors and treasures. They found the door and then picked the lock. Slowly opening it, they saw a large mechanical robot. The committee approached this monster and, realizing that it was motionless and harmless, called their students. And as soon as the adults turned away from the monster, the students shouted to be careful as the robot swung its fist. As soon as they entered, they were attacked by a huge golem. In order to give the others time to escape, the teachers and the genius student distracted the monster's attention. But the map of the labyrinth was left with one of those who distracted the golem, so the students did not know how to get to the surface. The guy asked the students about the map, to which one of the girls said that the Marquis should have a detailed map. Haruto looked at his map and then handed it to the students. Having said that he would go down to help, and they were to take his map and head to the surface, the students looked at each other happily. Haruto started to go down, thinking that even if he used search at full power, the range covered by magic was still not large. He wasn't exactly sure, but he felt like there were a few people who were definitely alive. And finally reaching the 20th floor, the guy saw how one of the teachers was fighting with a golem, and the rest of his group were lying on the floor wounded and unconscious. The man tried his best to continue fighting off the monster when he was shouted at to be careful. Telling the man to be careful, Haruto ran towards the golem and then swung his sword, cutting off its arm. The man wearily sank to his knees as the boy finally dealt with the monster, piercing its head with his sword. Haruto then approached the man, asking if he was okay and if he needed help, to which the man said he was more or less okay and then thanked the boy. The man looked at the boy and then asked if he was one of the students, seeing Haruto's school uniform. And as soon as the boy said that he was not a student and wanted to add something, the man interrupted him, saying that he understood. The man realized that they had missed each other a little, and then assumed that it was from Princess Rafina, thinking that the boy was her servant. The boy didn't object to the man in any way, but he told himself in his mind that he wasn't really her servant. He glanced at the two unconscious men, assuming they were teachers, and then remembered that the genius student was still there. The man then distracted Haruto from his thoughts by introducing himself. The man said that he was the lord of the Cordato territory and that he was the Marquis of Durandalzan Cordato. Naren was a little surprised that this tall man, who was like a gorilla, was the father of that pig-toad. He looked at the serious Marquis, realizing that he and his son were not alike, but then the boy looked a little closer, noticing one similarity, which was their identical noses. When Haruto began bandaging the Marquis's hand, he also said his name. The Marquis asked about Haruto, that was the boy's last name. Having tied a knot in the bandage, the boy said that it was his name. For the wrong guess, the Marquis apologized, saying that he was not polite. Then the Marquis said that now was not the time, because the student was behind and continued to play the role of bait. Then he asked if he could help the student. The boy agreed with the man and then asked His Excellency if he had a map. He hesitated for a moment and then said that he had one. The boy then opened the bottle of water using magic. The Marquis thought for a moment and then noticed that the boy was a magician and that he used magic without chanting. The man smiled, saying that the princess had brought a very talented man with her. The boy blushed a little, thinking that without wanting to, he had made a good impression on the Marquis. Noting that this could be a good help in a future serious conversation, the guy said that he had already gone to save the student, and asked the Marquis that he be careful when he would rise to the surface. The man said seriously that the guy had helped them a lot, so he could leave the rest to him. At this time, the student continued to run away from the monster, greedily gulping air. He was already tired of running from danger, but he had to do it. Then the golem hit the place where the student was with its huge fist, but he managed to jump back, causing the stone to fly in different directions. The student was behind the golem, and he was about to run again, but fell from fatigue. The monster had already swung to destroy the student, but Haruto found them. He thought that the student had hardly had time to catch his breath. He swung, noting that, judging by the state of the Marquis, this student must already be at his limit. He then used Air Bullet, which hit the monster's raised fist. The student watched as Haruto continued to use his spell, falling right into the golem. And when the monster was disoriented under a large stream of magic spell, falling to the ground, Haruto approached the student, asking if he was okay. The student pulled his hood off his head, and still slightly out of breath, said that he had been saved. Haruto looked at the elven ears, and then at the beautiful face of the stranger. He patted her head, praising her for holding up well. Blushing, the student hesitantly said that he was Boku. This made Haruto freeze awkwardly at his incorrect assumption. He apologized after realizing he was a guy, and then explained that the guy was so cute that Haruto mistook him for a girl. Boku blushed and then turned away from his savior, saying that it wasn't like that at all. Haruto looked away in shame and thought that it was a strange reaction for a guy. But then he began, telling the boy not to worry and to rely on his savior. He said that he would destroy this monster, asking the student to just rest and not worry. The student asked if he could destroy the monster alone. The guy froze from the words he heard. He turned around in shock at the saved student, not believing the words he heard and so desired. Haruto thought that everything was bad, because he had a bad wish about the student. And looking at the saved one, the hero repeated to himself that he shouldn't have stepped on a dangerous path. While he was still thinking about his bad desires, the golem had already stood up again and was moving decisively towards the boy. The student warned the savior when he saw that the monster was stretching out its iron hand towards Haruto. The boy dodged the monster's grab and then swung, cutting off the golem's arm. He smiled at the fact that he was able to do it, while the student looked on in admiration. Haruto looked at his sword, thinking that his consecrated silver sword was the table of his money, and then he attacked the golem again, thinking that iron was nothing to him, it could not cope with his magic. Having cut off the monster's arms and legs, the golem fell to the ground. The student lowered his voice, saying that his magic had no effect on the monster at all. The guy sighed contentedly, because he said that he could handle this golem. He may not look like much, but he was a former hero, and one who had defeated a demon lord. Then, saying that it was time to end it all, he swung his sword to pierce the golem's head. But then there was a very loud noise, which made the student and Haruto cover their ears to avoid going deaf. After the golem's body began to release steam from the cracks, which surprised the guy very much, looking at the monster. The golem then exploded, forcing Haruto to lie down on the ground and shield himself from the powerful blast. He glanced sideways at the exploding golem in surprise, not understanding why it had decided to self-destruct. The smoke from the explosion spread throughout the room. Haruto tried to cough out the smoke while cursing. He stood up and looked towards where the student had been standing, and then saw him lying unconscious on the ground with a pained expression on his face. The hero sat down next to the student, thinking that this was bad and he needed to stop the bleeding, so he began to search in his backpack for everything he needed to apply a bandage. In order to get to the wound, Haruto had to rip the student's clothes, and as soon as he did, the boy froze from the unexpected discovery. After which he crawled away from the student, surprised that it was a girl. The guy remembered that Boku had spoken in a masculine manner, although she had never said that she was a guy. He applied a rag to the wound, removing dirt and blood from it. The guy assumed that the girl was a tomboy. The guy carefully bandaged the wounded girl, stopping the bleeding. And when he had already done everything, she came to her senses and opened her eyes. She asked in a weakened voice where she had been, but then, remembering everything, she looked at the worried guy, asking if he had bandaged her. The girl pushed aside the cape that covered her, and then with a trembling hand, she took hold of the splinter, telling the guy that she was grateful, and abruptly pulled the splinter out of the wound. The guy looked excitedly at the girl who had sat down, asking why she did that. For that, the girl apologized, blushing, saying that she wouldn't have been able to heal herself if she hadn't done that. Haruto was a little surprised, and then the girl began to read the spell. She asked the spirits that circled in space to heal her with their power. Then she used healing. The guy watched in fascination as the girl's magic began to heal the girl before his eyes, after which her wound quickly healed and disappeared. The hero said that her healing magic was amazing, thinking that he himself could not use it. But the girl began to pull on her robes, disagreeing with the savior, and sheepishly added that Oni-san was much more delightful than her. She looked at the guy and then said that her name was Celestia, a Lugo, but her common name was Celeste. Then the guy smiled and said his name, and then added that he had done various things, and also said that he was an adventurer. As they spoke, the smoke that enveloped the defeated golem began to flutter. Haruto held his sword at the ready as he saw an unfamiliar silhouette in the smoke that definitely didn't belong to that monster. An unfamiliar tall object stood in front of them and said that the outdated model was too cumbersome. The monster's head was burning with flames as it looked at Haruto and then asked the hero why he was there. Then the guy answered that he came to save that kid, covering Celeste with his back, and then asked who the monster was, whether he was a demon or something like that. The guy noticed that the head of the unknown was the same as the ball in the basement of the church, and from this realization, the guy had strange feelings. After thinking for a moment, the stranger said that he hadn't asked the guy about that, adding that it wasn't that important. Suddenly, the villain began to attack the hero, who was clearly unhappy about this, telling the stranger to wait a little. Haruto frowned and looked at the golem before moving towards it, slashing his sword at the villain's side. He looked at his sword in surprise. The sharp part of the blade began to crumble. Haruto thought with displeasure that someone had made a joke on him, because this sword had cost him a lot, and in his soul he was already crying from the loss of the blade. And while Haruto was thinking about his grief, Celes called out to him, suggesting that the golem's armor had the ability to cancel out magic. She then suggested that even a magic sword was practically useless against a golem in combat. The boy thought about the magic dampener, while the golem noted that the elf was quite smart. The golem then began waving its hand, adding that she most likely understood everything since she had attacked its outer shell many times. Haruto once again engaged in combat with the golem, thinking that his opponent's armor was quite problematic. He continued to fight the enemy, thinking that if he had looked closely, it didn't look like his blow was completely useless. Haruto then decided that he should have aimed for the joints of this golem, and then the unknown man jumped away from the guy to the stone wall, but then looked at his leg in surprise. Haruto was also a little surprised that his opponent's leg was covered in ice, preventing the golem from moving. The stranger looked towards the elf, who extended her hand towards the golem, and then told her savior that he needed to immobilize it. Without wasting any time, Haruto swung his sword with all his might, aiming at the golem, and then pierced the opponent's joint with his sword. The unknown person had already swung at the guy to push Haruto away from himself, but he sighed and then used a fireball. Haruto smiled contentedly, realizing that the golem couldn't completely neutralize the magic. Then the monster's wounded arm fell off, crashing to the ground, and while the boy continued to stand ready if the golem suddenly wanted to attack again, it only chuckled. The golem grabbed its wounded shoulder, sharing with the boy that, as he did not expect, Haruto was strong. Celise continued to sit, covering herself with her robe, when the stranger admitted that he had never thought that he had any chance of winning in the first place. Haruto then asked if the golem had decided to become, to which he responded positively, thinking that he would probably do so, running away from the guy. The guy only smiled confidently, saying that he was sorry, because Haruto was not going to let the stranger go. But the golem replied that he could easily escape from his fate and from the guy, and then pointed to the side. Arturo and Celes in the direction the golem pointed, surprised that behind them stood a huge army of small golems, who then began to attack the student and the hero. Haruto, like the elf, looked in fear at this number of mechanical monsters that wanted them dead. Haruto shouted at the girl to be careful and not to get hurt, and while the two were fighting off the monsters, he began to move away from them, running away from the fate of being killed. Haruto breathed heavily, looking at his completely ruined sword, which was chipped on both sides and completely dull. He was very unhappy with his complete loss, and then said that they were definitely safe now. He didn't understand what was wrong with these mechanical monsters. He turned to the girl. Haruto was grateful to her for stopping the golem, and then he added that if it weren't for her, the guy would have had a much harder time. Celes, blushing slightly, awkwardly said that it was not like that. She said that the girl was practically useless. And when they headed to the surface, the guy thought that, like in the church, he didn't understand at all why he was causing him an uneasy feeling, or rather, caused it. After the battle, this feeling completely disappeared. It seemed to him that he was completely confused. After all, he had suffered some losses. For example, his sword was almost destroyed, and most of his clothes were in rags. He imagined his 4 girls, thinking about how he wanted them to heal his soul and body, to have 4 maids to look after him. When Silas and Haruto got out, they were already greeted by the students, teachers, and Marquis. Haruto thought and hoped that he would soon fulfill his dream. The guy, already accustomed to the antics of his friend, was not surprised by the whole situation that had arisen. The girl, however, was sarcastically asking someone about punishment. Laurier, standing arrogantly, wanted to punish the man. He was not against it, only happy from the signs of attention from her. While the girl was punishing the man, the others were shocked by her actions and the fact that the man was enjoying it. They did not understand what was happening. It turns out that on the 3rd day after the guy left for the dungeon, that man came to the hotel. He looked like a mix of a pig and a toad. The man thought that Rufina was his fiancée. When the man tried to approach Rufina, Laurier remembered the boy's order before leaving, that she was not to allow the man to touch the princess. So Laurier attacked the man gratuitously. Her blow hit the man in the face, and the force of the blow knocked out a tooth. The blow sent the man flying and breaking the wall. The guy, of course, did say that Rufina needed to be protected from threats, but it didn't mean that the man couldn't touch her physically at all. But Laurier took his words literally. After her attack, the girl was glad that she had prevented the man from approaching Rufina. The man soon came to his senses, so everyone expected that there would be a ruckus after the girl's attack. However, instead of a conflict, he begged Laurier to hit him again. All the girls were shocked by his words, except Laurier. She smirked and looked at the man with malicious amusement. After this event, the man began to train hard. Within a week, the result was already noticeable. His spherical belly had decreased a little. He did all this so that Laurier would punish him again. When the boy returned from the dungeon, he saw Laurier training the man. What he saw left him momentarily stunned. The girl was glad that he had returned. She jumped into his arms with joy, and Haruto was pleased with Laurier's actions. The boy and girl hugged each other in joyful reunion. The man was watching all this, and because of Laurier's actions, he stopped his training. The man frowned and looked at the boy tensely. He was displeased that Haruto had dared to interrupt their training. The girl's attention had been taken away from him. Haruto became dissatisfied with the man's gaze. He saw in the man's gaze a feeling of superiority over him. Night fell. The city was covered with a night shroud. The stars in the sky shone brightly silver, and the moon stood out brighter among them. Haruto decided to postpone the conversation with Rufina about the new weapon for later. That day, he just wanted to rest. The guy was in the room, but he was not alone. All the guy's thoughts were about rest. He wanted to enjoy the honey trap with 4 girls. Lying on the bed, Haruto was happy with their presence. He hugged one of them and began to pleasure her. Soon, the others joined him. Haruto plunged them into complete bliss. This was his perfect paradise. The guy enjoyed their appearance. The girls were different from each other, and thus were special and attractive to him in different ways. The guy liked their cheeks blushing with shame. Haruto was completely absorbed in the whole process and enjoyed the girls. For him, they were a treasure that needed to be protected. Looking at them, his strength filled him again. Haruto was completely satisfied with the rest. He gave each girl pleasure and bliss. The guy was completely satisfied with everything. The next day came. All the girls, except Laurier, were inside the hotel. The butler was explaining something to them. At the same time, the guy was able to do what he wanted before meeting the Marquis. He took the girl for a private talk. Laurier asked the guy what he wanted and why he left the other girls. Haruto asked the girl to fulfill his request. The girl was interested in his request and wanted to know what he would ask for. The guy wanted her to fulfill his request not later, but right away, at that very moment. He asked the girl to step on him as she had done with the man. Laurier was both embarrassed and pleased by his request. The black-haired boy wanted to feel this sensation at least once in his life. He didn't want to lose and give in to the man. Laurier, smirking, only agreed to his request, without saying anything about her. The girl ordered the guy to lie down on the ground. After Haruto lay down on the ground, the girl proceeded to his request. The guy looked at her actions with anticipation, while she was a little embarrassed. The girl felt a little uncomfortable doing this to the guy, but after a while she felt a strong interest. Laurier began to press the guy with great force. Laurier felt the thrill of power over the boy. She looked down at Haruto with amusement and a sneer. He enjoyed her touch. While the girl was advancing on him more and more, he was in bliss. He was in bliss. He was not in pain. Rather, he was pleased by her actions. Haruto discovered a new world of pleasure. The guy was completely satisfied with his request. The feeling that he was somehow losing or giving in to the man disappeared after the girl fulfilled his request. On the contrary, Haruto felt completely superior to the man. The boy imagined how the man envied him. Now the man was losing to him again. Haruto also liked the feeling of being dominated by Laurier. He wanted to try it with the other 3 girls. A mischievous and cheerful girl, an influential princess, and an obedient maid. The guy longed for the moment when they would touch him like Laurier. He felt as if he had a new passion, thanks to Laurier's actions. He wanted to feel mastery over himself again. At the same time, an elf girl approached them. She was shocked and looked at them silently. However, Laurier and Haruto managed to pay attention to her. It turned out that the girl had been invited by the Marquis. She explained herself to them with tears in her eyes in embarrassment. Her brother had not yet arrived, so she went to see what had happened. While the elf girl was explaining to them, Laurier kept advancing on the guy. Because of this, the elf girl ran away from Haruto and Laurier in panic out of embarrassment. The boy felt uncomfortable because of this, but he could not stop the elf. Laurier was only concerned that their trial was just in full swing, while Haruto was embarrassed that an elf had seen them. 2 girls from the window watched everything that was happening with a smile. Laurier wanted to continue, but the guy didn't want to anymore. Although it was nice, it was necessary to stop. Once inside, the tired boy soon saw the Marquis. The Marquis, asking for forgiveness for being late, greeted everyone. Approaching Princess Rufina, the man also apologized to the girl for being late. Rufina was not upset by his delay. After the Marquis apologized to the girl, he thanked the boy for his help in the underground labyrinth. Haruto accepted his thanks with honor. Opening the scroll of information, the Marquis admitted that he knew the reason for their arrival. However, he did not object to this. Haruto was glad of that. He realized that the reason he didn't object was probably because of his son, the son of the Marquis who had been attracted to Laurier. The Marquis continued the conversation, although everything was resolved with the guy's question, but the man himself had a problem. The Marquis's subordinate brought an unknown object wrapped in cloth. It was the hand of that strange golem the boy had fought in the dungeon. While the boy was thinking about the object, the elf girl stood up from her seat. The girl said that after examining the golem's hand, it turned out that it was clearly created using modern technology. The guy was interested in the fact that Silas knew something about the golem's hand. However, the girl was embarrassed and frightened by his signs of attention. Haruto realized that Celes was clearly wary of him because of the scene she had seen earlier, but there was nothing he could do about it. The Marquis explained to the boy that Silas was the most educated student in the class. Her knowledge amazed even the teachers. The man also asked Haruto for one request. After losing his arm, its owner ran away. The Marquis would like to capture the golem, but he cannot leave the territory. Therefore, the Marquis asks the boy to find that golem. At first, the guy wanted to refuse and not accept the man's request. But then he remembered that the Marquis went to meet him with Rafina. Moreover, the guy himself was interested in the golem. Haruto agreed to fulfill the Marquis's request. He didn't want to miss that golem either. The Marquis was relieved that the boy accepted his task. Laurier and the other girls were already tired from waiting for the conversation to end. Haruto didn't know what to do. After all, he didn't know where the golem was heading. The Marquis asked the boy for one more request. The man wanted them to stay in the city for another month. During this time, he hoped that he could find some information. But his main goal was different. By that time, Silas would have finished her studies. Therefore, the Marquis wanted the girl to go with them. The boy was momentarily confused and incomprehensible by the man's request. Haruto turned to the girl and looked at her. He understood the Marquis's request. He really wanted them to stay for the sake of the elf girl. However, the girl was too timid and shy. Although Haruto was glad he had become quite friendly with her during their journey through the dungeons, this would give him an extra chance to get closer to Celise. For the guy, this request seemed like luck, because he would be able to get such a cute elf girlfriend. This made the guy's fantasy of seeing friendship with the girl run wild. Haruto, imagining the girl in his fantasies, blushed deeply and began to smile widely. The sight of his vile smile scared Celise. The agitated guy was able to wake up from his fantasies only after a rough push from the girl sitting next to him. It was warm outside. The trees were green with bright foliage. A guy was sitting quietly and peacefully on a bench. Haruto was in a suburban park. At the moment, he was completely alone. Haruto was relaxing on a bench. Sharon and Mina had gone shopping, and Rafina and Laurier had taken on a quest to destroy weak monsters. At first, the guy was a little confused by their team, but they turned out to be unusually well-balanced. Rafina was good when it came to negotiating, and when it came to fighting, Laurier was inimitable in this. The guy was glad that they got along. It would have been much worse if they had been constantly fighting. By the way, every night all 5 of them slept in the same bed. Although the guy's endurance was high, he was the only one. Haruto suggested that they take turns several times. However, they did not agree with this. To be honest, the guy himself didn't want to take turns with the girls. He didn't want to distance himself and be separated from them. Every day he was in complete bliss from waking up in the morning, surrounded by warm female bodies. The guy understood what a true harem meant. Therefore, Haruto could no longer refuse this wonderful feeling. While the boy was recalling this feeling, a girl approached him. It was Celise. Haruto asked her what happened, why she came. The girl was looking for him. Someone at the hotel told her where to find the guy. The girl handed the boy the bundle she was holding. Recently, Haruto wanted to get one thing, and Celeste brought it to him. The guy thanked her for bringing him the thing he needed and took the package in his hands. The girl wanted to know why he needed the thing. Haruto explained to her that the thing was not for him. It was for Sharon, the girl with red hair. After his explanation about the bundle with the thing, Celise timidly asked the guy for one request. She told the boy that she could stand up for herself and protect herself, so she wanted him to teach her what it meant to be an adventurer. The guy saw in her request a chance to get closer to Celeste. Haruto thought that she hated him, so he was glad about this and immediately agreed to help the girl. The girl heard his consent and was beside herself with happiness. She smiled shyly at the guy and thanked him for his future help. Haruto saw her happy look and smiled back at her. The boy thought the girl was very cute because of her actions, but he didn't know what to teach her. After thinking about it, he started looking for training options. After all, in this world, he only taught the art of combat. However, the boy began to think about something else. He wanted to start with Amagai's style. Ask the girl to dress up in different clothes. Haruto did not want to miss the opportunity that had presented itself. The guy was completely absorbed in his thoughts about what he would do with the girl, thereby frightening Celise with his appearance. While the guy had not yet recovered from his fantasies, the girl, panicking, said goodbye to him and ran away to her home. At the same time, the guy was thinking that he still had about 2 weeks left to make a good impression on Celise. He believed that he could make her fall in love with him. However, he immediately realized the unpleasant news. After all, if Celise joined the morning training, he would have to restrain his actions towards other girls. The boy was depressed and upset by this. It seemed that he had made a mistake in trying to get closer to Celise. He did not know and was not sure that he could restrain his impulses. By this time, the girls had approached him. Sharon looked worriedly at the upset guy. Mina calmly watched his actions. Haruto immediately came to his senses and stopped being upset. He felt awkward because the girls saw him like this. At that very moment, the boy realized that Celise was not there. Haruto began to look around in panic, searching for the girl, but she was already far away from him. Soon, the guy took a bundle of things lying nearby and handed it to the short-haired girl. Sharon was surprised by his unexpected gift. The girl opened the bundle of fabric, and out came the thing that the boy had asked Cecil to find. It was a mitten. It turns out that the guy remembered in Torres that during a walk together, the girl wanted to buy such a thing. The peculiarity of the glove was that it was made from the memorable hand of that golem. Therefore, the gauntlet had the ability to nullify almost any magical effect. For a guy, this is exactly the thing that would suit Sharon. The girl, hearing his words, immediately put the mittens on her hand. Sharon was happy with her purchase. The mitten was perfect in her eyes. However, she thought that this thing suited the guy more than her. Sharon offered Haruto to use the gauntlet, but the guy refused. After all, it would interfere with his magic. And Sharon doesn't have any offensive magic, so she was the perfect candidate to wear the gauntlet. The girl, hearing his words, smiled brightly. She was happy not only from the gift, but also from the guy's words. Therefore, she happily accepted the glove. Haruto looked with affection at how the girl was happy with her new acquired thing. From happiness, the girl lifted her mittens up and looked at her with admiration. Soon the guy was distracted from how happy she was. He was more attracted by her appearance, her curves. The guy's face turned completely red from staring at Sharon's body. He was embarrassed and tried to find something to distract himself from the girl. His gaze fell on the girl in the maid costume. Haruto called out to Mina. The guy wanted to tell her something. Mina turned to Haruto and wanted to know what he wanted. But seeing his vile look, the girl immediately realized what he wanted. She knew what his expression meant. So the girl immediately offered the guy a place where he could fulfill his desire. Mina pointed to the building and asked if the place inside would suit him. For a moment, the guy was taken aback by her words. His whole face turned red from embarrassment. He was surprised that the girl had guessed so quickly. With a pause, he sheepishly agreed to the offer of the girl in the maid's costume, to which she began to prepare. Mina quickly approached the still joyful Sharon. The girl in the maid costume led the puzzled Sharon inside the building. Sharon didn't understand why she was leading her inside the building. The guy smiled calmly and told himself that he would think about Celise's training tomorrow later. At this moment, Haruto, left without clothes, wanted to fully enjoy the two girls. He was in the mood to relax. While the guy was enjoying Sharon, he thought about how Mina had figured everything out. After all, he had only said her name. Haruto realized that he was rather easy to understand. The maids were incredible, after all. Haruto turned his attention to Mina and began to bring her bliss with his actions. Haruto bit Mina's cat ear, thus touching her most sensitive spot. This made the girl tremble completely. Soon the guy began to pay attention to two girls at the same time. Mina and Sharon could only enjoy his attention. In the end, after they had enjoyed each other, everyone lay on the bed exhausted from fatigue and the previous pleasant sensations. After some time, Haruto and Celise were in the library. The guy was delighted with the library, its large number of books. While Haruto was looking around the room in admiration, the girl explained to him about the library. The library of the Iris Magic School had a huge number of books. Even the library of the royal capital did not have so many. Celise found out about the book the guy was interested in. He wanted to find a book about the history of the country. He was also interested in legends. That was why he came to the library. He wanted to know this world well. So, as soon as he had the opportunity, he asked Celise to take him to the local library. The girl climbed the wooden stairs and tried to find the book the guy was interested in on the shelf. The guy watched her search. However, something completely different about her attracted him. What he saw made Haruto's eyes instantly sparkle and his cheeks turn red. A beautiful view of Celise appeared before him. While the girl was interested in the book, which was almost at the very top of the cabinet, the guy was attracted by her lower body. Even though he couldn't fully enjoy the view because of her wide shorts that covered her body, the guy still stared at Silas. Smiling, he came to his senses and stopped looking. Although he was asking the library for forgiveness for his thoughts, he was glad of the view that presented itself. By this time, Celes had managed to find and collect the books he needed. Taking one of them in her hands, she suggested that the boys start with the book, The Genesis of Arudogizu. The boy agreed to her proposal. He'd never heard of such a thing before. Haruto thought that Arudogis would be more similar to Andalusia. Haruto also asked the girl to read the book out loud to him. Celes agreed to his request. After telling the legend of the world's creation, Celes told him how the kingdom of Milis was founded, and in the end, unfortunately, from the entire story, nothing was confirmed that Haruto was in Andalusia. From this understanding, the boy lay down on the table dejectedly. Haruto did not hear anything about Andalusia. He worried Celes with his actions. However, he immediately calmed the worried elf down. For him, all this meant that he was not in Andalusia, but in a completely different world. The boy thought about it with concern. He didn't understand why he ended up in this world, so he was a little worried about it. Even at night, Haruto began to doubt that this world was Andalusia. He prepared for a long time and remembered all the information about Andalusia and was sure that he did everything to move to that world. But it turned out that it was a different world with a different history. Even if that was true, the level of magic and the development of civilization were exactly the same as in Andalusia. Soon, Haruto didn't care. It wasn't Andalugi, but he was completely satisfied with this world. No one knew that the boy was a hero, and no one wanted to send him back to Earth. But the guy wanted to meet his friends, with whom he had been traveling for 3 years. However, the guy was not saddened by this. He accepted that he was not destined to meet them again. Celes saw the lonely expression on the boy for a moment. She was worried about the boy's condition. But he told her that he was fine, and thanked Celes for her concern and help with the books. The girl sheepishly accepted his thanks. The boy helped the girl put the books back in place. At the same time, he thought about his old comrades. They were probably worried that they couldn't save him from exile to Earth. Haruto hoped that they were enjoying life now. Haruto wanted to enjoy the honey trap with Mina in this library. The thought made him smile. The boy began to imagine a fantasy about Mina. She would rather be in the library, covering her mouth in embarrassment to hide any sound while they were enjoying each other. Haruto knew that she would most likely not hold back. Haruto's mouth began to water from the interesting fantasies that came into his head with the maid. He stared at one point, hanging in his thoughts. Silas's eyes filled with embarrassed tears from his long and indecent gaze at her. She trembled involuntarily because of the guy. When Haruto woke up, he realized that he had scared the girl again. She was still in shock from his indecent look. The guy realized that it would take time for Celes to trust him. There were only trees everywhere. The guy, being in the forest, was looking at the map. He was looking for his location on the map. Haruto looked at the map calmly and seriously. He studied the area around him on the map. The guy realized from the map that he was in the right place. Recently, Haruto went to the guild for a quest. Rare medicinal herbs grow deep in this forest. But at the moment, he was not in the forest about the plants. His task was to eliminate the one who was responsible for the destruction of a special flowering glade in the forest. Judging by the tracks, it was suspected that it was an orc. True, there were other adventurers who had accepted the quest before him, but none of them returned. They had probably already been eliminated. In addition to boredom, Haruto took this quest in order to increase his fame a little. However, the main reason was different. The remains of the orc and certain parts of it were currently very expensive. After all, they were used to make strong medicinal potions. They had a special effect, namely, they restored stamina. And the guy really needed these medicinal potions that restore stamina, so the guy took on the quest. After all, when he returned from the dungeon, he only lasted a couple of rounds with each of the girls. The guy is sure that this was only due to abstinence. For example, the day he gave Sharon the glove. Then the guy was completely exhausted and just slept at night. But he wanted to expand the harem and not stop at 4 girls. So the guy needed a potion. He definitely wanted to replenish his harem. Haruto immediately used the magic of searching the forest area. Soon he found the orc. Its presence was felt on the outskirts. The guy also felt other people besides the huge orc. As he approached, he watched the orc fight with the others. The boy was surprised by the recklessness of the 2 people. After all, only 2 were confronting the orc. However, he soon took his words back. The unknown were able to easily defeat the orc, leaving the guy to watch in disbelief. The liquidated orc of enormous size fell lifelessly to the ground, thereby causing the immediate surroundings to shake from his fall. The strangers noticed the guy approaching and wanted to know the reason for his presence near them. One of them turned out to be a girl. Haruto started to introduce himself to them, but the girl immediately stopped his words. She realized that he used magic to find this place. Finally, the exotic-looking girl brazenly asked the guy what he wanted from them. The guy was momentarily speechless from her impudence. It seemed to him that she was laughing at him. After all, the girl did not even let him finish when he tried to explain everything. Having calmed down, the guy told him again that he was an adventurer looking for an orc. The girl told the guy that he should have told her about it right away, but he wanted to convey this information to them earlier. Then the girl, after his explanations, approached the motionless body of the orc. She began to quickly get rid of the clothes that the orc was wearing. Then the girl pulled out a weapon in the form of a sharp steel rod. Instantly, she began to cut up the orc's meat, thereby irritating the guy. After some time, the girl finished completely, and she put the obtained remains of the orc in a cloth bag. The girl's companion approached the boy. The stranger, dressed in a robe, covered his face with a hood. He asked the boy about the location of the city of Iris. Haruto explained to him where the city was and which road they had to take to get to Iris. He didn't thank him, but simply accepted the information he gave him. The guy, hearing the voice of the unknown man in the robe, realized that he was also a girl, like his exotic-looking companion. Since the orc had been destroyed, the boy was going to go back, so he offered to take them to the city. They agreed, but before that they wanted to know his name. The guy introduced himself as Amagi Haruto. Upon hearing his name, both girls froze for a moment. The name was familiar to them. Suddenly, one of them launched a vicious attack on the boy, and from her merciless blow, it was clear that she didn't just want to hurt him. However, Haruto was able to defend himself from the blow. The boy was shocked by the sudden attack and could only scream in surprise. He did not understand why the girl attacked him. The exotic-looking girl bounced away from the guy, smirked, and acknowledged his strength, as he was able to defend himself from her attack. She turned to her companion and asked her what they would do next. She replied that there would be no problems from their actions. The unknown person hidden in the robe told the boy that Amagi Haruto really had an extremely indecent face. Haruto was surprised by her words, but he was not given a chance to answer. The girl started to attack the guy again with a running start. Grinning widely, she was preparing to strike him. To maneuver, the girl jumped high into the air, while simultaneously raising her hands with sharp nails to attack. Instantly, she, dropping down with her entire upper part, delivered a fierce and merciless blow with her hand. However, the boy was already prepared for her and was able to repel her attack with his steel sword. Haruto, though, defended himself with difficulty. The sword and the girl's merciless claws collided, making a grinding noise as they struck. The boy realized that they really wanted to eliminate him. Although he didn't understand anything, they were definitely his enemies. This meant that he had to defeat them. The guy became serious and began using magic. The exotic-looking girl immediately noticed the use of magic near her, and so easily dodged his attack, earth bondage, thus shocking Haruto. He was shocked that she was able to dodge his attack before activating the spell. The girl was also surprised by his ability to cast spells without saying a word. In addition, his amazing magic, enveloping his sword, also amazed her. If he were an ordinary opponent, her claws would have eliminated the guy long ago. Haruto didn't understand who she was and why she knew so much about him. However, they were distracted from their conversation by a girl in a robe who ordered her companion to eliminate the guy. The exotic-looking girl took the order in a relaxed manner and told the one she understood. The guy was annoyed that the unknown woman in the cloak was constantly ignoring his questions. Haruto really wanted to grab them and question them so that they would answer all his questions. Having become angry, the guy seriously attacked his rivals. In his anger, he cast the Earth Shackles spell again. Vines shot out from the ground at lightning speed, surprising his enemies with their sudden appearance. The vines surrounded his rivals and began to wrap around their bodies so that they could not resist. The blonde girl watched this, panicking. The girl began to resist and try to get out of the vines that had grabbed her, but they had completely immobilized her. The guy was glad that they had lost and told them to give up. However, she did not listen to him and with stubborn zeal tried to get out of the encirclement of vines, but she could not even move. The guy wanted to know the reason why they attacked him. The unknown man in the robe told him that, as he thought, it was impossible to deal with him with just one of this creature. Haruto, hearing the voice of the unknown man in the cloak, was perplexed. After all, the unknown man's voice had now become male. The unknown man in the cloak began preparing for an attack. A sharp and loud sound made the guy cover his ears. The girl was also surprised by this. The sound gave her a headache. Haruto realized that something was wrong. The sharp sound meant something unpleasant for him. The guy guessed what would happen soon. With anxiety and pain from the sound, he instantly used the magic spell, Earth Wall. Under the influence of magic, the earth quickly began to rise. At the same time, the body of the unknown man in the robe began to collapse. A second later, there was an explosion. However, the guy managed to use magic, and a wall of earth was able to protect him from the attack. Although the girl managed to survive the explosion, she was hit by flying rocks. She could not protect herself from them, as she was immobilized by vines. The boy breathed a sigh of relief. This was dangerous. If he was a moment late, he wouldn't know what had happened. Soon, Haruto noticed the surviving girl. He was surprised by her strong body, because she was able to remain almost unharmed during the explosion. The guy turned to the immobilized girl. He asked her about her companion, whether he was a golem. But the girl didn't know at all who her companion was. Thus, she angered the guy with her ignorance of the identity of her companion. He was a little dissatisfied with this, since they had attacked him together. Haruto also realized from the girl's stupid look that she had not lied to him. Although it sounded stupid, the guy had already met a person similar to this girl, and it was Laurier. One way or another, he needed to find out something. So, threatening the girl with his weapon, the guy began asking her for information about her companion. But she didn't answer him because she was hired after all, so she can't give out information about the client. She admitted that she had lost. The girl told the guy that he could do whatever he wanted with her. From her words, the guy took the liana in his hand and used magic on it. Slowly, the liana began to embrace the girl's body more tightly, simultaneously secreting plant mucus. The girl was confused by the sensations unknown to her. Haruto, wearing a bad guy mask, began to question the girl with a vile grin. He wanted to know her name and their purpose, why they came to this place. However, the girl stuck her tongue out at the guy and refused to give him even the slightest information. Haruto, grinning even more, used magic on the liana again. Instantly, many vines approached the immobilized girl and surrounded her. The girl was surprised by their sudden appearance. But new vines had already embraced her, and the vines were also different from the fetters that had previously embraced her. They were filled with an unknown liquid. The boy looked at this with a malicious grin. Combined with the spell Water Flow, the vines turned into a slimy mass. 2 hours later, the girl was still tightly surrounded by vines. Their touch made her shiver and sigh languidly. The girl was completely at the same time in bliss from new, strange sensations for her. Because of this, tears appeared in her eyes unconsciously. Haruto was pleased with the girl's appearance. Victory was undoubtedly his. The girl could no longer tolerate touching the vines. The guy, although he had defeated the girl, also felt heavy, and all this was because of the picture that appeared before him. The girl looked seductive in these vines. But suddenly, the girl began to scream from the excess of feelings due to new sensations. A bright light surrounded her body, which is why the guy had to cover his eyes with his hand. Haruto didn't understand what was happening. The bright glow near the girl's body began to slowly fade as the size of the girl's body began to decrease. The girl's body, having lost its support in the form of vines, fell down, all surrounded by the fetters of the earth. But the vines no longer embraced the girl as tightly as before. All this was due to the changes in her body size. The girl had decreased not so much in size, but also in age. She looked like a little girl. The guy was shocked by the girl's sudden transformation. After all, she looked like a teenager. The girl, having disentangled herself from the vines, pounced on the guy. Hitting him with weak blows, she blamed him for the disappearance of the magic she had accumulated. Haruto didn't pay attention to her blows, accusations. The guy was distracted and, at the same time, surprised by her sudden change. This was the true form of the beast woman. The girl cried. After all, the warrior's pride was in sacrificing himself. However, instead, she felt pleasant sensations unknown to her. She told the boy to take responsibility for his actions. The situation was aggravated not only by the girl's words about responsibility, but also by her new appearance. Haruto was completely distracted by her appearance. From embarrassment and not understanding what to do, the guy's cheeks simultaneously turned red and a cold sweat appeared on his back. After a while, the guy told the girl named Tanya to be quieter and calmer. Tanya was on his shoulder, completely immobilized. Haruto recently found out from the girl what her name was. The beast girl's name was Tanya. She couldn't calm down. She was uncomfortable with the fact that he was carrying her like a sack of potatoes. The boy told the girl that he had taken responsibility for taking her to the guild. Then he again ordered her to calm down and stop moving. After his words about wanting to give her to the guild, the girl began to panic greatly. She asked the guy to release her immediately. Haruto was irritated by her twitching and wondered when she would stop screaming. However, the girl was distracted from panic. A thought about the guy's magic came to her. She only realized that while she was near Haruto, her magic was restored much faster. Tanya was half beast human, half demon. She did not remember her parents and did not know her exact age. Her character was ugly. The girl bit the guy. Because of the pain from her bite, Haruto screamed. Tanya bit his shoulder hard. Because of this guy, it was unpleasant. So, to get rid of the unpleasant feeling, he reflexively moved the girl away from himself at a great distance. Tanya fell face down on the ground. The fall brought tears to her eyes. The girl's nose hurt from the impact with the ground. The guy was angry at her actions. But the girl didn't care. She was also angry because he pushed her off of him. She didn't understand the reason why he did it. The guy grabbed the girl by the head and started shaking her. Haruto was still angry with her. Tanya began to tearfully beg him to stop. Haruto stopped shaking the girl, but did not remove his hand from her head. Tanya explained to him that since Haruto was emitting a huge amount of magic, there would be even more if she ate a piece. Hearing this, the guy realized that she wanted to try to eat him. Sighing, he pulled the girl's cheek. Her actions were unacceptable, so he told the girl not to do that again. If Tanya tried to do that again, he would punish her severely. The girl could only take his words seriously, but Tanya still wanted his magic, so she asked Haruto to allow her to touch him. The guy, after thinking for a bit, agreed to her request. After all, he liked the feeling of her pressing her body against him. After some time, the guy, holding the girl on his shoulder, reached the city. Haruto thought about what to do now. The guy didn't know what to do with the girl. He could easily hand her over to the knights, but something stopped him. In the city of Iris, knights predominate more than guilds. There were a huge number of knights patrolling the city, but still, the guilds were more important. Therefore, Haruto decided that it would be better to hand the girl over to a guild he knew. The guy happily entered the building. However, no one greeted him back with joy. On the contrary, everyone looked at the guy with bewilderment. They were shocked by him. Haruto realized that his acquaintances had misunderstood him. Right now, he came to the guild with a little girl who was tied up hand and foot. It was a very bad situation. Tanya also realized this and started screaming that the guy had kidnapped her. It took Haruto over an hour to clear up the misunderstanding. After a while, they were already in the room. The guy offered the girl to make a deal with him. He was still in a bad mood because of the previous situation. When he was able to explain everything to the guild and dispel the misunderstanding, they decided to give Tanya under his supervision. After all, there was no reward for the girl's capture. Besides, she was a little girl. The guy continued and laid out the terms of the deal. He would help Tanya restore her magic and allow her to attack him. And, in exchange, she will have to tell him about her exploded satellite in the mantle and also the reason why Tanya attacked Haruto. Tanya, having heard the terms of the deal, thought for a moment, but immediately agreed to the guy's proposal, thus surprising him. Haruto looked at the girl in surprise. He was a little confused by her quick agreement because the guy was already ready to fight about the deal. After receiving an adult body, Tanya left the village to become an adventurer. The girl was a half-breed of two strong races, so she had an advantage over ordinary people. She was also interested in fighting strong opponents. The guy was momentarily depressed by this thought. He didn't understand why all the demons were so obsessed before the fights. Laurier immediately came to mind. She was exactly the same. Tanya told the guy everything. About a month ago, two mysterious figures in cloaks approached her, and one of them said that there was a powerful adventurer in the city of Iris, Amagi Haruto. An unknown figure advised Tanya to find him to test her powers. The journey to the city took about a month, but they met her in the forest, next to him. And for the entire month, Tanya never saw her companion without a cloak and hood. Moreover, they practically did not talk. Haruto understood from her story that Tanya was a stupid girl. After all, no one would usually agree to carry out an order from a person unknown to her. Tanya didn't care about her companion's secrecy and secretiveness, and that's why that explosion surprised her no less than the guy. Haruto realized that he had received useless information from the girl. He frowned as he looked at the carefree girl. Many things remained unclear. That's why the guy was worried about it. Tanya's companion was probably a golem. In addition, the girl remembered that the second companion, who did not go with them, was missing one arm. They met in a city east of Iris, in a city located near the border. The boy had never been there before. The escaped golem had no interest in his team of girls, and it seemed to be targeting Haruto. If that golem wanted revenge, then Celeste should be its target, but the golem was only interested in one guy. But the guy wasn't too worried about this information. He left the thoughts about the golem for later. Suddenly, the door to his room opened. Sharon and Princess Rafina suddenly burst into the room. Sharon happily informed them of their return with Rafina. But instead of an answer, they were met with an unpleasant picture for the girls. In the room sat Haruto and an unknown little girl with an exotic appearance. The smile slipped from Sharon's face. She was unhappy with the guy. She and Rafina did not understand where he got the girl from. After a while, the guy explained everything to the girls. There was a huge number of different dishes on the table. Tanya, while eating the food, asked the guy with displeasure about the return of her magic. The guy remembered this and called out to Laurier. Laurier was also eating pastries and drinking tea at the time. Haruto wanted to know if she could, like with Sharon, transfer magical power to Tanya. Laurier agreed. It was easy for her to do. Tanya left the dining area and stood near the wall. Laurier's hands moved towards her. The process of restoring the girl's magic began. However, after a while, Tanya noticed that her appearance still remained the same. She was still a little girl. But Laurier told her that the restoration process was over. Because of this, Tanya was angry because she did not get her adult body back. The girl was left to vent her anger on the guy next to her. Tanya was unhappy that she remained the same. Laurier, lost in thought, told them that if she wanted to get all her magic back, she needed a kiss for that. Haruto didn't understand the meaning of the girl's words. He looked at Laurier in confusion and asked her what she meant. Laurier, smirking, said that the guy had heard everything correctly. Tanya's magic is restored by touching the guy. Laurier's magical energy is also restored magnificently by this, especially at night. The girl laughed at the last words. Sharon, embarrassed, was surprised by this information. After all, she did not feel anything when in contact with the guy. Laurier explained to her that Sharon was human, so she was simply not capable of this. Haruto did not understand Laurier's last phrase about the night at first. But after a moment he realized that she had hinted at a moment of pleasure with him. He was embarrassed by this. Tanya was glad that, it turned out, all her magic would be restored from the kiss. Turning to the guy, the girl began to approach him. Tanya wanted to quickly restore her magic. Haruto was confused by her actions. Having lifted Tanya onto the bed, since she was in the form of a little girl, the guy approached her. He felt a little uncomfortable, but he still wanted to do it. Haruto felt guilty about it. After all, she looked like a little girl. However, the boy still grabbed the girl's face with his hands. Bringing her face closer to him, Haruto slowly leaned towards the girl. He pressed his lips to Tanya and began the process of restoring magic. The recovery process continued, and 3 girls were watching all of this. Sharon, completely blushing, looked at Haruto and Tanya. A few minutes later, the guy moved away from the girl. His cheeks turned red from the process of restoring his magic. Tanya felt her magic being replenished. Haruto, hearing her words about replenishment, thought that he didn't feel any decrease in his magical power at all. Tanya, however, was not satisfied with just one time, so she approached the guy and asked him to start the process of restoring magic again. The guy did not refuse and began to touch the girl. As they approached, they began the process of replenishing the girl's magic reservoir again. The guy felt incredibly hot from the whole process. The girl, in his eyes, unconsciously became extremely cute after the recovery process. Laurier approached Tanya, put her hand on her shoulder. She told the girl that besides the kiss, there was another option that would fill the reservoir of magic much faster. Tanya wanted to know about this option. The girls began to talk about another option for restoring the magic reservoir. Soon, Tanya moved away from Laurier and approached the guy. Laurier looked at all this with a sly look. Approaching the guy, Tanya stood in a cute pose. With an innocent and seductive look, she asked Haruto to try the accelerated recovery method with her. The guy couldn't help but react to her actions. Her sweet and seductive appearance made Haruto pounce on Tanya. All his attempts to maintain his composure were shattered. Winter came, and it became cold outside. However, because Haruto slept surrounded by girls, the cold did not feel at all. The guy woke up. He felt very comfortable and warm lying in bed with the girls. But Haruto still had to get up. He raised himself and stroked the sleeping Rafina and Sharon. Finally, sitting down on the bed, Haruto looked at the girls. His gaze was drawn to the exotic-looking girl. At the moment, she looked older than before. Tanya was taller than Laurier, but shorter than Mina. It seems that the transfer of magic was successful. During the process, the girl's size suddenly increased, which scared the guy. Apparently, the increase in the girl's body size is proportional to the required magic power. Haruto wouldn't mind giving all his magic to Tanya just to see her previous body size again. Also because there was even more work to do, since his harem was increased by one more girl. Haruto tried a new trick he learned in the forest. The technique Slippery Vines, created by combining two spells, Earth Binding and Water Flow. To his surprise, Sharon wanted to be the first to experience the beauty of this technique. The slime-secreting vines tightly wrapped around her body. Haruto learned that Sharon was apparently interested in such experiments. When he saw her with the vines, the boy couldn't help but grin indecently. The other girls didn't try to run away or express disgust at the technique. They always obeyed the guy. Haruto was lucky with them. While the boy was recalling the events of yesterday, the girls woke up and sat up too. Haruto wished everyone a good morning. After some time, a meeting took place. Only Princess Rafina and Haruto himself were present from the guy's team. The man told them that, following the reports of the nightly order, they tried to find a secret entrance to the cave. Due to the collapse, they were unable to find the entrance. However, they were able to find out that the entrance was located somewhere in the forest to the east of the city. Princess Rafina listened to their report in silence. At that time, although the boy was silent, he was surprised by the existence of a secret entrance. The man continued his story. Further investigation confirmed that the golem was moving in an easterly direction. The boy immediately realized that if the golem could cross the border, it would be very difficult to reach him. The Marquis heard the words. The man asked Princess Rafina if she wanted to join the trip. He also offered to help her if she needed it. After the report, Haruto was handed a small iron pass. This was permission to cross the border. The man told them that a little later he would provide them with all the necessary things and funds for the trip. Rafina, bowing to him, thanked the Marquis Cordato. Haruto watched in admiration as she bowed to the man. She was just like a princess from a fairy tale at that moment. For a guy, the girl was very cute. After a while, the boy and girl were able to free themselves from the meeting. Rafina and Haruto were walking along the streets of the city. Amaji was glad to have a pass. Rafina, smirking for a moment, attracted the guy's attention. The girl reminded him of last night and praised the guy. Haruto, blushing from embarrassment at her praise, turned to the girl. Rafina continued to praise the guy, as he somehow managed to come up with a method that would satisfy and not deprive everyone. Approaching the guy, she grabbed his hand and deliberately touched it with her upper body. From tomorrow on, they will no longer play with each other. It won't work like before. The girl started looking at the guy in an indecent way. Haruto immediately understood what she wanted. Of course, he was happy to enjoy the process with everyone at once. But sometimes it is necessary to be alone with each of the girls. To strengthen the connection, such actions are also necessary. The guy and Rafina were in the room. They were already excited. Haruto looked at the excited girl. She was waiting for his actions with embarrassment. Her eyes literally drew the guy in. Their bodies merged into one shadow. The process of pleasure began. Each of them felt extraordinary bliss. The sensations were incredibly pleasant. The guy began to please the girl and enjoyed the whole process himself. Perhaps this is how dreams and hopes come true. After a while, Tanya was looking at the birds soaring in the bright blue sky. The guy and Laurier were sitting relaxed and resting on a bench that was on the roof. However, Haruto was attracted by what was happening below. Celis and Mina were preparing food. The guy was looking at Celis. Laurier and Tanya were interested in what attracted the guy. He replied that he was just thinking about someone in an apron. He described his fantasy to the girls. The guy wanted to see someone in an apron without clothes. Tanya didn't understand the meaning of this. Haruto explained that it was tempting for him, but Tanya still couldn't understand. Laurier, smirking, told him that the guy was always thinking about something stupid. The guy was embarrassed by her words. He sighed and told both girls that they lacked attractiveness in such things. Laurier, hearing his words about attractiveness, darkened. Haruto thought that what he said about attractiveness and such things was a sore subject for Laurier, so he felt a little awkward. However, Laurier's actions showed the opposite. She approached the guy and pressed a certain part of her body against him. She grinned and told the guy that his attractiveness was not important in pleasure. Tanya felt how the guy's magic increased. The girl also clung to the guy and was in bliss from his magic. Haruto realized that there was a connection between his arousal and magical energy. After the unexpected sensations from Laurier in close contact with Tanya, Haruto was sweating all over. He was hot. The guy wanted to take a bath. An idea came to him. Since no one was in a hurry, the guy wanted to have a bath day. He told all this to the other girls. After going downstairs, the boy began to prepare. He wanted to cast a spell to create a bath day. Silas was worried about him. After all, manipulating matter requires a huge amount of magical power. He might have reached the limit of magical power. But Haruto wasn't worried about things like emptying his reservoir of magic power. He had complete confidence in himself. After all, he was a former hero. The guy instantly cast the magic spell, Earth Bath. He was going to dig a hole using the Earth Bath spell. This would increase the density and hardness of the water to prevent it from becoming cloudy. By digging up a source of water from underground, the boy was able to hold back the flow of water that appeared during the excavation. Then, after holding Haruto, he directed a stream of water down the pit and heated the water using the firebomb spell. After some time, the bathhouse was ready. Instead of the former plot of land, a so-called pool with heated water appeared on the site. The girls were amazed and surprised by what the boy had done. Each of them went down to the water. Celise was surprised that he had managed to get a huge amount of water, because in their world, it was difficult. Haruto was glad of the girls' admiration. Especially, he was glad of the praise from Celes. The guy realized that the girl was no longer afraid of him. He looked at Celes with flushed cheeks. He wanted her to repeat her admiration for him once again. However, the girl was worried that there was only one bathtub. He grinned and suggested that they all bathe together. Celes was shocked that the guy would bathe with the girls. She wanted to suggest that they bathe one after another. But he justified himself, arguing that the water would soon cool down, and he would not have the strength to warm it up again. Celes understood the meaning of his words. She timidly agreed with his argument. The guy, smiling, expected that she would agree to bathe together. But Celes refused to take a bath because of the shared bath with him. The guy felt that everything did not go according to his plan. While the boy was feeling down because Celes refused, Sharon approached the girl. She wanted to know why she wouldn't go to the bathroom. Sharon tried to persuade the girl to take a bath. However, Celes still did not agree. The boy was happy. He got help from someone he didn't expect. However, Sharon told Celes that Haruto would look after them and guard them. The guy realized that he would not get what he wanted. Celes was surprised that he would not swim with them because it would be difficult to warm up the water. Sharon told her that the guy lied to Celes. The guy called out to Sharon. The girl turned to the couple and looked at him with a dangerous, dark gaze. The guy couldn't say anything from her gaze. The view of the bathhouse was blocked so that no one could watch them bathe. The girls enjoyed the warm water in the bathhouse. The guy was annoyed. Haruto didn't swim with them because he was on guard, although he could keep an eye on them just by using search. But he realized that he hadn't told anyone about the properties of search magic. At least with the help of the magic spell, search, the guy could secretly look at the girls bathing. Sometime later, in the same place, a sparring match was taking place between Haruto and Sharon. The girl struck the guy and was able to cause damage. Sharon was surprised by this. Laurier looked at them, keeping his arms crossed over his chest. The girl was happy for her companion. After all, she was able to do this. Sharon jumped for joy, happy that she was able to touch the guy and hit him while attacking him. Haruto congratulated the girl. She became stronger than before. Sharon bowed in response and thanked the guy. If it weren't for his training, she wouldn't have been able to touch him during sparring. Haruto didn't respond to her words of gratitude. He just smiled at Sharon. Then he stroked the girl's head, ruffling her hair. Since they were in the forest, the guy suggested that they take their training to the next level. Sharon was surprised by his words. Until now, Haruto had been protective of her and had given the girl slack, but from now on he would train her more harshly. The girl only took up her attack stance at his words. She accepted that he would train her hard. Sharon was ready for it. Sharon started attacking the guy. She wanted to touch him with her fist, but he instantly dodged her blow. The girl was no slouch. Without stopping for a second, she continued to attack the guy. The girl dealt blow after blow but could not touch him. Sharon frowned in anger and frustration, sweating. The girl stopped attacking with her hands and began using her legs. Swinging her leg, she tried to attack the guy directly in the head, but he was able to see her attack and, pushing off, dodge it. Sharon was surprised that he was able to dodge her sudden attack. She tried to use her other leg, but was stopped by the guy's leg. Haruto, without wasting time, grabbed the girl's hand with lightning speed. Sharon could only scream in surprise. The guy pulled her towards him. Then, after he pinned her down, Haruto completely pushed her body down towards the ground. The guy made the girl fall to the ground, covered with green grass. The girl could only look at the blue sky that appeared before her eyes. Laurier watched calmly and relaxed as her companion was pushed onto her back by the boy. She wasn't worried about Sharon. At the same time, Sharon was trying to recover from being thrown onto her back, breathing heavily as she tried to get more air. While Sharon was trying to catch her breath, Haruto was above the girl. The guy looked down at her and took some action towards her. Laurier only closed her eyes to his actions, so as not to see the embarrassing moment. Haruto grabbed a certain part of the girl with his hands, causing her to scream in embarrassment. The guy enjoyed the feeling of contact with the girl. A certain part of her body fit perfectly in his palms. This was the girl's punishment for her loss. After all, the guy told her that he was going to take her seriously. Sharon was embarrassed by this. Haruto continued to touch Sharon with his hands, slowly squeezing and unclenching her beads. The girl sighed softly from his touch. This perfect combination of the girl's body proportions seemed to be made especially for the guy. That's exactly what he thought. Haruto thoroughly enjoyed the contact with Sharon. However, the guy soon came to his senses from Sharon's incredible appearance. He remembered that, besides the girl who had lost to him, Laurier was nearby. Her contemptuous and condemning gaze burned into the guy's back. Haruto realized that the girl did not approve of his actions. It seemed to him that Laurier had become too arrogant towards him lately. So the embarrassed boy moved away from Sharon, pretending that he hadn't done anything a few minutes ago. The boy thought that it would be bad if Celise saw them. But Celise had been watching his actions for a long time. With a frightened look and tears in her eyes, the girl looked at them, trembling. The girl, noticing the guy's gaze, immediately ran away from their company. Haruto wanted to stop her, but she moved away from him too quickly. The guy could only silently and dejectedly look at the girl's retreating back. He didn't know what to do. At the same time, Sharon was trying to regain her composure. The girl was breathing heavily due to the recent vivid sensations from the guy's hands. Haruto again placed his hands on a certain part of Sharon's body, thus surprising her with surprise. The boy didn't care about Laurier's presence anymore. He was trying to relieve the stress of what happened to Celeste. Haruto felt like he was almost going crazy. The other girls were on another plot of land. Mina was preparing for dinner. She had already placed the dishes on the table. Rafina and Tanya were resting, not paying attention to Sharon's sighs. As darkness fell on the street, the boy left their house. Haruto, having checked that no one was following him, walked a long distance from the house. The guy pulled a cell phone out of his pocket. Grinning, he looked at the screen of his smartphone and turned it on. Haruto started scrolling through his phone's screen. He wanted to look at every single obscene picture he had downloaded before leaving Earth. But suddenly, Celise came up to him from behind. The girl was surprised that the guy was not at home. The guy shouted in embarrassment from fear. Hiding his phone behind his back, Haruto panicked and wanted to know why the girl wasn't home. It turns out Celise was going to the bathroom. After learning that the girl hadn't seen anything, Haruto breathed a sigh of relief. Unconsciously, the boy pulled out his smartphone from behind his back, thus drawing the girl's attention to the unknown equipment in his hands. The girl looked at the cell phone with interest. Celise was completely attracted by the phone. With childish curiosity, she wanted to know what the thing in the boy's hands was. The guy was confused by her expression when Celise was interested in the phone. He explained to her that it was a smartphone. The girl was studying the phone completely. To her surprise, the phone screen suddenly went dark for her. Celise was afraid that she had broken it, but the guy immediately calmed her down. Taking the phone from her hands, the guy turned on the camera and showed it to the girl. Celis was delighted with the functions of the phone that she did not recognize. She didn't understand how this equipment worked. If the creation of the phone was done with magic, then Celis didn't understand how the boy could do it. She was interested in the unknown symbols. Haruto wanted to explain to the girl, but she was too distracted by studying her phone. Suddenly, an unexpected sound came from the smartphone, which scared Celis. The guy could only take the phone from her hands and turn off the ringtone. The girl looked at the guy with embarrassment and admiration. He was a professional smartphone user. Celis, approaching the guy, excitedly asked him for permission to examine the phone. Haruto was surprised by her strong interest. The guy, panicking and not looking at Celis, tried to refuse her. He didn't want her to see his collection of obscene pictures while studying the phone. However, Celis approached the boy and looked at Haruto with her puppy eyes. She had never been this close to him. The boy realized that this was a chance to get closer to Celis. They would be able to spend more time together, studying the cell phone. But there was one problem. Once Haruto deleted these photos, he would not be able to restore them. And they were like memories of Earth for him. Celis, seeing him thoughtful, thought that he did not agree with her request. The guy had to give in, although he was not sure of his choice. But doubts quickly disappeared from his head. After all, he now had so many girls that the need for such photos disappeared. So the guy, having regained his composure, agreed to examine the phone, thus making the girl happy. Celis was glad that she was able to study the object that interested her called the telephone. She thanked the guy with all her heart. Haruto told the girl that it was too late to start studying today, so he suggested postponing the matter until tomorrow. The girl went to sleep in the house and wished the guy good night. In response, he also wished her the same. 10 minutes later, Haruto erased all data from his phone, bidding farewell to those photos. He would never forget them. The next day, early in the morning, the boy gathered the girls. Having arranged them in a semicircle, he wanted to explain to them one type of magic. Sharon raised her hand and wanted to ask Haruto a question. The girl wanted to know what kind of magic it was. After all, she could only use enhancement magic. Haruto answered her question. They will study fire magic. Even if this type is of little use in battle, it is very useful in everyday life. The girls were interested in learning fire magic. The guy continued he wanted Celeste to help him with an explanation. So Haruto called the girl to the board. Celeste, accepting his invitation, stood up from her chair and walked to the center of the semicircle. While Celis approached the board and did something with it, the guy asked Tanya and Laurier if they knew how to use fire magic. But Laurier and Tani did not know how to use this kind of magic. Laurier was calm about her ignorance, but Tani was irritated by it. Celis had already prepared herself and began her explanation. In fact, using fire magic was easy. In order to summon a small fire, they only needed to ask the fire spirit for it. The boy was fascinated by the new information from Celis. After all, Haruto simply imagined flames to summon and did not ask for a fire spirit. Celis saw his expression, but the boy came to his senses and pretended that nothing had happened. He asked the girl to continue the lecture. After that, Celis continued the lesson. The girl was a genius, so she explained everything quite simply for the others. But, although her explanations were good, learning magic is not easy. Few can achieve high rank in it. Haruto noticed that some, namely Tanya and Laurier, were not interested in learning the new type of magic. They were sleeping peacefully and did not delve into the information. The guy wanted to punish them later. Mina, the girl in the maid costume, was in a difficult situation. It was difficult for her to use magic, so she asked the guy to demonstrate fire magic to her again. Haruto agreed. It was not difficult for him to do it. A small flame instantly appeared on his palm. Celis was amazed that he used magic without words. Mina was also delighted with the guy's skill. Mina asked the boy if he could see spirits. The boy, still in a proud state from their praise, said that he could not. Celis was surprised that the boy couldn't see spirits. She looked at the boy in amazement, still happy because of the praise. Haruto realized that something was wrong and asked the girl about it. Celis said that everything was fine. However, to use magic without words, you need to be in complete synchronicity with the spirit. The guy was surprised. Did spirits really exist? Haruto confessed to the girls that he had never seen spirits, but he had seen a fairy that followed the hero. The girls looked at the guy in surprise. Silence fell for a moment. Mina had never even thought about the existence of fairies. She asked Celis about the differences between fairies and spirits. Celis explained to them that fairies were little known. They were quite rare, but there was a theory that fairies were related to spirits. The guy wanted to know about Kurito because the fairy called him a spirit. Celis explained to the guy that such spiritual stones are created by fairies, but no one knows the details about it. The girl changed the subject. She was interested in the guy's ability. If he couldn't see spirits, then how could he use magic without words? The guy began his explanation with embarrassment. He simply imagined how the fire made noise, and thus the flame appeared on his palm. Along with the explanation, he showed funny movements. However, Celis did not understand the guy's explanation at all. She looked at his performance with bewilderment and confusion. Mina, on the contrary, understood his actions. After trying his method of creating a magic spell, a small flame instantly formed on her palms, illuminating her face. The boy felt happy that his method worked, and the girl was able to use fire magic. Celis looked with admiration at the flame that formed on the girl's palm. Mina thanked the guy for his explanation. Now she understood exactly how to use fire magic. She was happy about it. Celis felt a little depressed after her admiration, because how could one understand such a stupid explanation? But his stupid explanation helped not only Mina, but also the other girls to understand what was going on. But Rafina could not grasp the essence of the spell. The guy silently looked at Celis, who was dejected by this. She, shocked and in disbelief that everyone could understand magic from the guy's explanations, went to the stream, dejected. The sound of the wheel hitting the ground grew louder. The carriage rolled smoothly and relaxed along the road. The girls from the open roof noticed the border town ahead, Maruto. The guy was with them too, looking at the border town. On his back was a girl with an exotic appearance. Tanya was very embarrassed. She, in an embarrassed state, called out to the guy with displeasure. But he pretended not to hear her call. The guy smiled blissfully. The girl called him an indecent guy. After all, Haruto brazenly touched her, under the guise of supporting her. Hearing her discontent, he only suggested that she get off his back. Tanya couldn't answer and just tolerated his touches. Rafina and Sharon, accustomed to the guy's actions, just looked at it with embarrassment. Haruto recalled the information about the border town of Maruto. Iris and its surroundings were quite large cities in this world. What made Maruto unique was that in the center of the city, there is a wall dividing it into two parts. You can only leave and enter the city by going to the city hall. Soon, the boys' team arrived in the city of Maruto. The boy, still holding Tanya on his back, was enthusiastically looking around the city streets. They were lively. Celis began to explain the news to everyone. On the other side of the city was the famous dungeon. It was not as deep as the labyrinth in Iris, but no one had ever been able to get through it. Haruto remembered that Tanya wanted to come here. It turns out that she wanted to go to Maruto for the dungeon, but she was told that she shouldn't go to the neighboring country, so she joined the guild. They didn't have to cross the border yet. Their target wasn't the dungeon, but the golem. Because of that, the guy split the team and wanted to get down to business. He decided to divide everyone and assign roles. Laurier and Rufina would convey greetings to the city authorities and a letter from the Marquis asking for help. Then Sharon, with Celes and Tanya, the three of them will find a place to stay and go through an interview at the Adventurers Guild. Only Haruto and Mina remained. They would mostly just ask passers-by. But the guy would like to explore the city alone. If the golem is still in this city, it can sense something. The boy turned to his companion. It was necessary to start from the outskirts of the city. And so, Haruto was left alone with Mina. The girl held his hand tightly and did not let go of his hand for a moment. The boy enjoyed the touch of Mina's soft hands. He wasn't going to bring the girl to a back alley and ask for something indecent. If they got lost, it would be bad for them. The guy noticed the building. At first, he thought it was a hotel. However, the presence of girls in revealing clothes near the building showed that it was not a hotel. The boy had the idea that this was not just a hotel, but maybe a red light district. Haruto didn't understand. Why was he in such an area? Mina and Haruto blushed at what they saw. But the guy knew what he really wanted. So, with embarrassment, he nervously called out to the girl standing next to him. But his attention was distracted by unknown people. They said that he could not calmly walk around here with such a beautiful girl. A group of three men menacingly blocked the way for Haruto and Mina. They looked at the girl with an indecent look. Mina, from their indecent glances, anxiously hid behind the guy. Haruto took a defensive pose and tried to peacefully talk to the shameless men. but they only laughed loudly at his words. They began to mock and verbally laugh at the guy, from which Haruto began to get angry. However, the guy did nothing. He simply began to ignore them and tried to walk forward with the girl through the group. But one of the men grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her towards him. With an indecent look, he began to examine the caught prey. However, at that very second, an attack fell on his face. The man did not even have time to somehow defend himself. The blow was lightning fast. Haruto's attack could only make the man fall down, causing his companions and Mina to look at the fallen man in surprise. The remaining two men, although shocked and a little scared by the guy's attack, were at the same time angry at his actions. Haruto accidentally hit the guy out of reflex. He looked at them and told them with a serious face that they started it all, so they shouldn't complain. The blonde man only became angry and frowned at the boy's words. Taking out his dagger from its sheath, he wanted to attack the boy. But Haruto only calmly watched his approaching blow. With one action, he was able to force the man not only not to hurt him, but also to drop his weapon from his hands. The boy dodged and arrogantly told the man that he was too slow. The man still didn't understand what had happened. Haruto didn't stop there. He attacked the man and hit him in the sore spot, causing him to only silently scream in pain. The blonde man from the last blow, the man could no longer attack him and could only rise on the ground in pain. The guy turned to the girl. To the awkward surprise of the guy, the girl was already able to deal with the other man. She was uncomfortable because she could not resist and attacked too hard. But she still kept holding the man by the scruff of the neck and pressing her weight on him so that he couldn't move or run away. After a while, the girl used healing magic on the men to bring them to their senses. The guy approached the first man. He, waking up, realized in shock that all his limbs were tied with a rope. Frightened, he looked at the guy wide-eyed. Haruto looked at the man with a depressing, cold, gloomy gaze. The man, trembling, tried to get out of this situation. The boy told the man that he would be released as long as he did not do anything like that. The man, panicking, quickly agreed to the boy's condition. But they didn't let him go. At first, Haruto wanted to ask the man something. The man looked at the boy questioningly. It turns out that Haruto asked him about the golem, but he had neither seen nor heard of such an unknown being, who was missing a right limb and had a hood on his head. The guy didn't believe the man. He asked him his question again. It seemed to him that he was like an undercover informant. However, the man still didn't answer the boy. So Haruto got angry for a moment. He thought that in this situation, they should answer everything that was asked. Having not received any valuable information, Haruto was about to leave the group of men, but one of them mentioned a store that was nearby. Hearing the man's words, the boy looked at him. He was interested in what he said about the store. After questioning them again, he let the group of 3 men go. They tried to quickly distance themselves from them. Mina did not understand what they should do now. She tried to find out from the guy about it. Did he want to talk to the guy the men were talking about? He agreed with her assumption. Haruto wasn't fully absorbed in the conversation with the girl. He was distracted by the price. The break cost about 5,000 coal. Seeing this, the girl squealed. She called out to the boy in embarrassment, stuttering as she tried to say something to Haruto. Clutching the fabric of her suit, she said that since he saved her from those bandits. So should she do something nice for him? The girl with flushed cheeks said this to the guy. Mina grabbed his hand and thanked him shyly and timidly for saving her. Haruto accepted them reverently. Swallowing in excitement, the boy was excited by the girl's words. Her words greatly excited Haruto, causing him to blush. So the guy sheepishly suggested taking a break. She agreed to his proposal. The break was taken in the red light district. The couple was already in the room. The girl's seductive sighs were heard throughout the room. She was completely absorbed in the pleasure of the guy's actions. After a while, they moved from the bed to the bathtub. The guy thought it was weird that the bathtub cost 5,000 colas, but it was worth it. The girl and the boy were completely absorbed in each other. They were enjoying each other's presence and were in bliss, when suddenly the boy was attracted by the girl's ear. He asked Mina about her ears. At the same time, he touched her human ears. The girl was a representative of the beast people race. That's why the guy was attracted by her ears. The girl was embarrassed by his attention to her ears. Haruto was wondering if she could hear with both types of ears. Mina replied that the sounds were coming from everywhere. That's why she didn't really understand the difference between humans and beastmen. The girl also did not understand how ordinary people could use only one pair of ears. He only said to himself in embarrassment, after all, they are ears. However, soon they no longer thought about the ears. All their attention was drawn to the pleasure and touching of each other. After some time, Haruto went to the western part of Maruto City, namely to the tavern. The guy entered the building. Rufina and Mina were already waiting for him there. They greeted the guy joyfully. Princess Rufina was sitting on the sofa and drinking tea. Haruto, seeing the two of them, also greeted the girls, who had returned so quickly to their current temporary home. The guy asked about Laurier. Rufina immediately answered that the girl was sleeping in her room. Haruto was a little dissatisfied with what the girl said. After all, Laurier was supposed to accompany Rufina and help her. But the guy stopped thinking about it and asked the girl if they found out anything. It turned out they hadn't found anything interesting. They'd been told there hadn't been any special incidents, so no one knew anything, but they were going to look into it. The guy, after hearing her report, wanted to know what was going on with Sharon and the other girls. It seemed he shouldn't have expected anything grand from them. Ryevna noticed a bag the boy was holding. She was curious about what he had bought there, so she asked the boy about his purchase. Haruto smiled and pulled out an item from the bag. He bought leggings and showed them to the girls with a beaming face. Rufina and Mina were surprised by his purchase. They did not know what the word leggings meant, and it was the first time they saw this type of clothing. The guy explained to them what leggings were. Simply put, they were elastic women's underwear. Haruto was walking along the streets of Maruto City and noticed a store called Everything You Need at Roman's. The guy had been told about this store by that man. He left Mina at the hotel and came there alone. Entering the store, the guy looked at the store's assortment with surprise. It turned out that this was not the informant's office, but a store with cosplay costumes. This place was truly romantic. At the entrance, he was met by a friendly man with glasses and a mustache. They sold costumes of knights from the royal court, guild uniforms, black robes, robes for the Irish school, and basically everything that the heart could desire. The guy realized that the man probably thought that dressing up as a maid was Mina's hobby, so he told the guy about the store. The guy, leaving the store, felt his wallet become lighter. Rufina understood the purpose of his purchase. If it makes him happy, then she will gladly try on the leggings. Mina also agreed with her words. She invited the guy to join him on a trip to this store next time. The guy was happy with their response. As a result of the argument between the three, it was decided that this treasure, the leggings, would belong to Rufina. If he gave them to Celise, she would definitely not wear them. So the boy, looking at the girl, asked her to let Celise put them on. Rufina enthusiastically agreed to fulfill his request. The next day, early in the morning, the sun's rays fell into the room. A bird sang loudly under the window. The boy woke up from its singing. Yawning, the boy finally woke up from his sleep. Haruto was already tired. He couldn't believe that he was sleeping alone in such a small room. He felt uncomfortable. It was a mistake to bring Celise to the innkeeper. The girl did not want to sleep with him, so she put him in a solitary room. As a result, all the girls were placed in one large female room. If there had been at least 2 rooms for girls, Haruto could have visited them at night. Haruto couldn't believe that he was deprived of the pleasure of enjoying the girls' bodies. He waited a whole month, and now he didn't have a single indecent photo. The guy could only sigh sadly. Because he couldn't do anything about it, he decided to relax separately with the girls. The first one he enjoyed was Rufina. After that, he went to the place where he had been with Mina and Rufina, with Laurier. From such pleasure, his wallet would soon be empty. Visitors to such places already knew him. The third time, to the general shock of passers-by and visitors, he went to that place with Tanya. However, the guy did not regret it. Then Sharon and Mina, as an apology for leaving him in a separate room, decided to reward him. He would do whatever he wanted with them. As expected, Mina held the bar. She had great stamina, like a beast man. The guy enjoyed the sight of the 2 girls. Mina was indeed a magnificent and incredible maid. Soon the guy joined the girls and began to give pleasure to each of them. It had been 2 weeks since they had arrived in Maruto City. In her room, Celise wanted to take the phone apart. Celise didn't want to take it apart completely, but just to study its structure. The guy was worried about his phone, but he had already promised Celise the phone to study. She also wanted to solve the problem with charging the phone, since it was quite difficult to charge it. Therefore, the girl wanted to use magic for this. So, he convinced Celise to dismantle his cell phone. After all, Haruto had set such conditions for her, so he couldn't tell her anything. The conditions he set for her to allow her to examine the phone Haruto didn't care about them. In fact, he wanted to spend this day with Celis as a date. He wanted love to develop between them already. Haruto wasn't going to just hold hands with her all the time. However, the girl ruined his plans. She was engrossed in studying the phone. There is a spirit of a scientist in her who only dreams of taking everything apart. The guy remembered how happy the girl was that he gave her permission to study his cell phone. Her smile was beautiful then. The guy considered her an angel at that moment. Celis didn't pay attention to the guy. She was completely absorbed in studying and disassembling the phone. After taking the phone apart and removing the cover of the smartphone, the girl noticed something interesting in the structure of the device. She looked at the phone with interest and saw a huge black rectangular object in it. The guy touched it and told the girl that this big rectangular thing was a battery. Celis looked at the guy in surprise. It turns out he knew about the structure of the phone. However, Haruto admitted that he only knew about the battery. The guy watched as the girl took apart each detail of the cell phone with interest. She examined the cables of the device. Then Celis asked him to read the inscriptions that were written on the battery, but he couldn't do it because everything was written in English. Celis was upset that he couldn't read the inscriptions that interested her, but the guy only knew simple words in English because he only went to the 6th grade in school. The guy's attention was distracted. He saw something. It turns out that Celis put on the leggings he gave Rafina after all. The boy was beside himself with happiness. In his mind, he thanked Rafina for being able to persuade Celis to wear leggings. Next time, he would thank her in full. Suddenly, Laurier approached Celis and Haruto, thereby frightening him. Laurier's call made the guy turn to the girl. Laurier had just woken up and was hungry, so she asked the boy to eat with her somewhere. But he wanted to refuse her because he was busy with Celis. Haruto told Laurier that he and Celis were currently disassembling the smartphone. However, the girl, despite his reluctance to go with her, hinted to Celis that she was wearing indecent clothing, that is, leggings. But Celis did not hear his words, but the guy was scared by Laurier's actions. Therefore, he could not refuse, and Celis herself was not against letting him go. One day, knights in armor rode quickly through the streets on horses. The boy, hearing the loud clatter of horses, came out of the store to look. Haruto went back to the store. It turns out he looked at the weapons in this store every day. He was fascinated by the sight of the mithril sword. In terms of material, it was much better than his previous sword. The boy needed a weapon to replace the one he lost in the battle with the golem. However, this sword was terribly expensive, so he tried to negotiate with the seller to reduce the price by half. But the man refused and wanted to throw the guy out of his store. The guy had to leave with nothing, but he was upset about it. He would probably never be able to buy that sword. When he went back to the inn, he saw Rafina. The girl approached the guy and called his name, causing him to look at Rafina's actions in surprise. But Rafina didn't care. She was worried and anxious about something. She told the guy that the matter was urgent and wanted to take him away quickly. The guy and the girls learned some terrible and shocking information. It turns out that a demon recently came out of the dungeon. The old man told them that about 5 days' drive from eastern Maruto, there was a dungeon known among explorers.